The ballroom fell silent as the double doors swung open. Every head turned, every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Standing in the entrance was a woman who seemed to command the very air around her. Her emerald gown caught the light from 1,000 chandeliers, but it was her eyes that truly captured the room, dark, determined, and fixed on one man alone. Kofi Mensah, the billionaire tech mogul whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Time magazine, froze with his champagne glass halfway to his lips. The woman walking toward him with measured, deliberate steps was impossible. She couldn't be here. She couldn't be real. But she was. "Hello, Kofi," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "Remember me?" His hand trembled. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of crystal and golden liquid. Because he did remember. God help him, he remembered everything. Amara. The name came out as barely a whisper. She smiled, but there was something sharp behind it, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "I told you I'd come back. I told you 18 years ago that when I grew up, I'd be your wife." She paused, letting her words sink in while the crowd leaned in, desperate to hear more. "You laughed at me then. I wonder if you're laughing now." The room erupted in whispers. Kofi's fiancée, Madison, appeared at his elbow, her perfectly manicured hand gripping his arm. "Kofi, who is this woman? What is she talking about?" But Kofi couldn't answer. He was staring at Amara as though he'd seen a ghost, because in many ways, he had. The little girl from the village, the one he'd left behind all those years ago, now stood before him transformed into a force of nature. And from the look in her eyes, she hadn't come just to reminisce about old times. She'd come to collect on a promise he never thought would matter. "We need to talk," Amara said, extending her hand to him. "Privately. Unless you'd prefer I tell everyone here the real story of how Kofi Mensah built his empire. I'm sure they'd find it fascinating." The blood drained from Kofi's face. How could she possibly know? 18 years. 18 years since he'd left the village of Pando, since he'd left her behind. 18 years since he'd made choices he'd spent every day since trying to forget. And now those choices were standing in front of him in a designer gown and heels that probably cost more than most people's cars, threatening to tear down everything he'd built. "I'll give you until midnight," Amara continued, checking an elegant watch on her wrist. "Meet me in the garden. Alone. Or I start talking, and trust me, Kofi, I have a lot to say." She turned and walked away, leaving behind a wake of shocked faces and a man whose carefully constructed world had just begun to crumble. Madison's voice was shrill in his ear, demanding explanations. But Kofi couldn't hear her over the roar of blood in his ears, over the memories flooding back with the force of a dam breaking. A 7-year-old girl with wild hair and wilder dreams, tugging on his sleeve as he packed to leave for America. "When I grow up, I'll be your wife, brother Kofi." And he'd laughed, patted her head, and walked away without looking back. Now she was back. And from the steel in her spine and the fire in her eyes, she hadn't returned empty-handed. The question that burned through Kofi's mind as he stood frozen in his own engagement party, surrounded by the cream of New York society, was simple and terrifying. What exactly did Amara want? And more importantly, how much did she know about the secret that could destroy him? The memories crashed over Kofi like waves as he stood in the garden at 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes before midnight. The party continued inside, but out here in the darkness, with only the soft glow of lanterns and the distant sound of Manhattan traffic, he was 18 again, standing in the red dust of Pando, Ghana, saying goodbye to everything he'd ever known. Pando had been a small village 2 hours from Accra, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, where the market women could tell you what you'd eaten for breakfast before you'd even left your house. Kofi's family had been poor, not starving, but the kind of poor where every Sadie counted, where education was a luxury they couldn't afford for all 5 children. Kofi had been the chosen one. The eldest son. The one who would make it out, make something of himself, and pull the family up behind him. His uncle Samuel, who'd made his fortune in America, had offered to sponsor Kofi's education in New York. It was a miracle, a golden ticket, a chance that came once in a lifetime. He remembered the day he'd told Amara he was leaving. She'd been 7 years old, the youngest daughter of his mother's best friend, Auntie Efua. While Kofi had been packing his single battered suitcase, Amara had followed him around like a shadow, her eyes wide with tears she refused to let fall. "Don't go, Brother Kofi," she'd pleaded, using the honorary title that wasn't quite family but was closer than friendship. In their village, in their culture, such bonds mattered. They meant something. "I have to, little one," he'd told her, crouching down to her level. "I'm going to America to study, to become someone important. Then I'll come back and help everyone." "When will you come back?" Maybe 5 years. Maybe 10. Her small face had crumpled. Then, with a fierce determination that only children possess, she'd grabbed both his hands. "Then when I grow up, I'll be your wife. I'll wait for you, and when you come back, we'll get married." Kofi had laughed. Not cruelly, but the way adults laugh at children's fantasies. "Okay, Amara. When you grow up. Promise," she'd insisted. "Promise," he'd said, not meaning it, not thinking it would ever matter. He'd left the next morning before sunrise, unable to face another round of goodbyes. His mother had cried. His father had gripped his shoulder so hard it bruised. And somewhere in the crowd of well-wishers, Amara had watched him go, her small fist pressed against her mouth. That had been 18 years ago. Now, checking his watch as it struck midnight, Kofi heard footsteps on the garden path. Amara emerged from the shadows, still wearing that stunning emerald gown, but she'd removed her heels and carried them in one hand. It was such an unexpectedly human gesture that it threw him off balance. "You came," she said. "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has choices, Kofi. You of all people should know that." She moved to a stone bench and sat down, patting the space beside her. "Sit. I won't bite." "What do you want, Amara?" He remained standing, keeping distance between them. "Why are you here? How did you even find me?" She laughed, a sound that carried both bitterness and genuine amusement. "How did I find you? Kofi, you're on the cover of magazines. You're the African tech king, the man who built a billion-dollar software company before 35. Finding you was the easy part." "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant." She set her shoes down carefully beside the bench. "You want to know why I'm here after 18 years. You want to know what I know. You want to know if I'm going to ruin you." His silence was answer enough. Amara looked up at the sky, at the few stars visible through New York's light pollution. "Do you remember what happened after you left, Kofi? Do you ever think about us back in Kpando?" "Of course I do. I sent money." "Money." The word came out flat. "Yes, you sent money. For the first 3 years. Then the payments stopped." Kofi felt his stomach drop. "That's not true. I sent money every month to Uncle Samuel to distribute to the families. I never stopped." "Interesting." Amara's voice was soft, dangerous. "Because Uncle Samuel told everyone you'd forgotten about them. That you'd become too American, too important for your village. My mother died believing you'd abandoned us, Kofi. She died thinking the boy she'd helped raise, the boy she'd fed when his own family didn't have enough, had turned his back on everyone who'd sacrificed for him. Auntie Efua is dead?" The news hit him like a physical blow. "When?" 10 years ago. Malaria. Could have been treated, but there was no money for the hospital. Amara finally looked at him, and in her eyes he saw not just anger, but a deep, abiding pain. "A lot of people died, Kofi. A lot of things happened after you left. Bad things. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Uncle Samuel said." "Uncle Samuel said a lot of things." Amara stood up, moving closer to him. "He told you we were fine. He told you the money was being distributed. He told you everyone was proud of you, that the village was thriving because of your success." "Yes." He lied. The words hung in the air between them. Kofi felt the world tilting beneath his feet. "What are you talking about?" "Your uncle, the man you trusted, the man who sponsored your education and helped you build your company. He stole everything, Kofi. Every dollar you sent back, he kept. He used your money, your success, your name, to build his own fortune. And when people in the village started asking questions, started wondering why they weren't seeing any of this prosperity you were supposedly sending, he told them you'd changed. That you'd become selfish. That you'd forgotten where you came from. That's impossible. Uncle Samuel wouldn't. Wouldn't he? Amara pulled a phone from a hidden pocket in her gown. I have bank statements, Kofi. I have receipts, emails, recorded phone calls. I have 18 years of evidence showing exactly what your uncle did. Would you like to see? Kofi's hands were shaking. This couldn't be real. Uncle Samuel had been his mentor, his sponsor, his partner. Samuel Mensah was the co-founder of Mensah Technologies, the man who'd helped Kofi build everything from the ground up. Why? His voice cracked. Why are you telling me this now? Why come to my engagement party, threaten me in front of everyone, drag me out here if you just wanted to tell me my uncle betrayed me? Amara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because I want what you promised me 18 years ago, Kofi. I want you to make good on your word. You can't be serious. That was a child's fantasy. A promise, she interrupted. You made me a promise. And I've spent 18 years making myself into someone worthy of that promise. I've educated myself, built myself up from nothing, learned everything I could about your world, your business, your life. I've become exactly the kind of woman who could stand beside a man like you. I'm engaged to Madison. Madison. Amara said the name like it tasted bad. Madison Carter, daughter of Senator Robert Carter, your entry into political connections and East Coast old money. I know all about Madison. I know she's cheating on you with your chief financial officer, Marcus Webb. I know she's only marrying you because her father's campaign needs your money and your success story. I know a lot of things, Kofi. The night had gone from bad to catastrophic. You're lying. Am I? She held out her phone again. I can prove everything I've said. About your uncle, about Madison, about all of it. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What do you want? Kofi asked again, but this time the question had a different weight. Amara stepped closer, so close he could smell her perfume, something with jasmine and spice that reminded him painfully of home. I want you to honor your promise. I want you to break off your engagement to Madison. And I want you to marry me instead. That's insane. Is it? She tilted her head, studying him. Think about it, Kofi. Madison is using you. Your uncle has been stealing from you and destroying your reputation back home for years. Everything you've built is based on lies and betrayals. I'm offering you the truth. I'm offering you someone who actually came from where you came from, who understands the weight of the promises you make, who won't forget what matters. By blackmailing me? By giving you a choice. Amara's voice softened slightly. I'm not the little girl you left behind, Kofi. I'm a woman who's fought for everything she has, who's survived things you can't imagine, who spent 18 years preparing for this moment. You laughed when I said I'd be your wife. I'm not laughing now. She turned to leave, then paused. You have 1 week to decide. Break off the engagement, deal with your uncle, and marry me, or I release everything I have to the press. Your uncle's theft, Madison's affair, and a few other secrets I've discovered about how Mensah Technologies was really funded in the early days. Secrets that would land you both in prison. What secrets? Kofi's voice was barely a whisper. Amara looked back at him over her shoulder, and for just a moment, he saw the ghost of that 7-year-old girl in her expression, determined, fierce, unstoppable. The bridge collapse in Lagos 5 years ago. The faulty software in the traffic control system. The 47 people who died. She paused, letting the words sink in. Your uncle covered it up, paid off investigators, buried the evidence. But I found it, Kofi. I found all of it. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the garden, leaving Kofi alone with the weight of 18 years of lies, betrayals, and a promise he'd never meant to keep. And the terrifying realization that Amara hadn't just come back to marry him. She'd come back to save him, or destroy him. The choice, apparently, was his. Kofi didn't return to his engagement party. He couldn't face the crowd, the questions, Madison's wounded pride and her father's calculating eyes. Instead, he walked the streets of Manhattan until dawn, his mind racing through everything Amara had said, everything she'd threatened, everything she'd offered. By the time the sun rose over the East River, he'd made a decision. He needed to know if she was telling the truth. At 9 a.m. sharp, Kofi walked into the offices of Mensa Technologies on the 47th floor of a gleaming building in Midtown. His assistant, Jennifer, looked surprised to see him. The engagement party had gone until 3 in the morning, and he'd told everyone he'd be taking the day off. "Mr. Mensa, I wasn't expecting. Is my uncle in?" Kofi interrupted. "Uncle Samuel?" "Yes, he arrived about an hour ago. But he's in a video conference with the Singapore office." Kofi was already walking past her desk, down the hallway toward the corner office that Samuel had occupied since the company's founding. He didn't knock. He simply opened the door and walked in. Samuel Mensa looked up from his computer screen, surprise flickering across his distinguished features before settling into his usual warm smile. At 63, he was still a handsome man. Silver hair, sharp suits, the kind of presence that commanded rooms. He'd been Kofi's hero once. The man who'd made everything possible. "Kofi, what a surprise. I thought you'd be sleeping off last night's celebration. How's the newly engaged man feeling?" Samuel's eyes crinkled with what looked like genuine affection. "That entrance from your mystery woman certainly made things memorable." "Who was she?" "Her name is Amara," Kofi said quietly, closing the door behind him. "Amara Osei. From Kpando." Something flickered in Samuel's expression, there and gone so fast Kofi almost missed it. "Osei? I don't recall." "Auntie Efua's daughter. The woman who used to feed me when we didn't have enough. The family we were supposed to be helping with the money I sent back." Samuel's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat. "Ah, yes, I remember now. Sweet woman, Efua. Tragic what happened to her. So you knew she was dead?" "Of course. It was years ago, though. Why bring this up now?" Kofi moved closer to the desk, his hands clenched at his sides. "Amara says you stole the money, Uncle. All of it. Every dollar I sent back to help our people. She says you kept it for yourself." For a long moment, Samuel simply stared at him. Then he laughed, a deep, rich sound that had always made Kofi feel safe as a child. "Is that what she told you? And you believed her?" "Kofi, think about what you're saying. I'm the one who brought you to America. I'm the one who paid for your education, who helped you start this company. Why would I steal from villagers who have nothing?" "That's what I want to know." The laughter died. Samuel leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "What exactly did this woman tell you?" "She says she has proof. Bank statements, receipts, emails. She says you've been lying to me for 18 years, letting everyone back home think I abandoned them while you pocketed everything I sent." "And you believe her over me? Over family?" Samuel's voice carried an edge now. "Kofi, I'm disappointed. This woman shows up at your engagement party, makes wild accusations, and you come running to interrogate me like a criminal. Then show me the proof that you distributed the money. Show me the records." "The records from 20 years ago? From transactions in a small Ghanaian village." Samuel shook his head. "Kofi, be reasonable. I don't keep receipts from every envelope of cash I handed out to market women and farmers. That's not how things work back home, and you know it." It was a good answer. A reasonable answer. The kind of answer that would have satisfied Kofi completely if Amara hadn't planted seeds of doubt in his mind. "She also mentioned Lagos," Kofi said quietly. "The bridge collapse. The traffic control software." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Samuel's face went very still, very careful. "What about it?" "She says the software was faulty. That it caused the collapse. That you covered it up. That's a very serious accusation." Samuel stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. The Lagos incident was investigated thoroughly by local authorities. Our software was cleared of any wrongdoing. There were structural failures in the bridge itself. That was the official conclusion. Was it the true conclusion? Are you asking me if I bribed investigators in Nigeria? Samuel's voice was cold now. Are you really standing in my office, questioning my integrity based on the word of some village girl who probably wants money? She doesn't want money. Then what does she want? Kofi hesitated. The truth sounded insane even in his own head. She wants me to marry her. Samuel stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing again. Marry her? This gets better and better. Let me guess, she's the daughter of some family we helped, and now she thinks she's entitled to you? Kofi, this is a shakedown. A very elaborate, very clever shakedown. She knew about Madison and Marcus. The laughter stopped abruptly. What? She says Madison is having an affair with Marcus Webb, our CFO. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the window, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. I was hoping you wouldn't find out this way. Kofi felt his stomach drop. You knew. I suspected. I had someone look into it about 2 months ago. Samuel turned back to face him. I didn't tell you because I thought it would pass, that Madison would come to her senses. The wedding arrangements were too far along, the political connections with Senator Carter too valuable. I thought it would be better if you never knew. Better? Kofi's voice rose. You thought it would be better if I married a woman who's cheating on me? I thought it would be better than watching you throw away everything we've built over a wounded heart. Samuel snapped. Madison comes with connections. Kofi. Her father's support opens doors we need for the new defense contracts. Her family's name legitimizes us in circles that still see us as outsiders, as what? As Africans who don't belong. As new money in an old money world, Samuel corrected. Don't make this about race. Make it about strategy. Madison is a strategic asset. She's supposed to be my wife. And she will be. She'll be a perfect wife, beautiful, connected, acceptable to everyone who matters. What she does with Marcus Webb is irrelevant as long as she's discreet. Kofi stared at his uncle as if seeing him for the first time. Who are you? I'm the man who made you, Samuel said flatly. I'm the man who took a poor village boy and turned him into a billionaire. I'm the man who built this empire, who made the hard choices, who did what needed to be done while you played at being the genius programmer. Don't you dare judge me, Kofi. Everything you have because of me. And everything you took from our people, everything you stole. I took nothing that wasn't owed to me. Samuel's composure cracked, anger bleeding through. Do you know what I sacrificed to bring you here? The money I spent on your education, your housing, your expenses? The opportunities one gave up to invest in your dreams? I earned every dollar I kept, Kofi. I earned it by making you into someone who mattered. By lying to me. By letting everyone back home think I'd abandoned them. By protecting you from obligations that would have dragged you down. Samuel moved closer, his voice intense. If you'd known how desperate they were, how much they needed, you would have bankrupted yourself trying to save them. You would have sent every penny back to Pando instead of investing in the company. I did what was necessary to ensure your success. And Lagos, the bridge, the 47 people who died. Samuel's face went cold again. That was an accident. A tragic accident that had nothing to do with our software. Amara says she has proof otherwise. Then she's lying, or she's been fooled by forged documents. Samuel returned to his desk, suddenly all business. Kofi, listen to me carefully. This woman is dangerous. She spent years preparing this con, gathering just enough real information to make her lies believable. She knows about Madison and Marcus because she's been stalking you, watching you, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And you're playing right into her hands. She knew things, uncle. Things she shouldn't know. Because she's done her homework. Because she's smart and patient and very, very good at this. Samuel pulled out his phone. I'm calling security. I'm having her investigated. And I'm getting a restraining order to keep her away from you and from this company. No. Samuel looked up sharply. What? Don't call security. Don't investigate her. Not yet. Kofi's mind was racing. She gave me a week to decide. A week to break off the engagement and deal with you. Deal with me. Samuel's voice was dangerously quiet. Her words, not mine. Kofi held up his hands. Uncle, I need time to think. To figure out what's true and what's not. If you're innocent of everything she's accused you of, then we have nothing to worry about. But if there's even a grain of truth in what she's saying, there isn't. Then you won't mind if I do my own investigation. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 18 years of history, trust, and now suspicion. Finally, Samuel nodded slowly. Fine. Investigate. Waste your time chasing shadows. But Kofi, when you find out I'm telling the truth, when you realize this woman has played you, I expect an apology. And I expect you to let me handle her my way. Which is? Samuel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She threatens our company, our reputation, our future. That makes her an enemy. And I deal with enemies very efficiently. There was something in his uncle's voice that sent a chill down Kofi's spine. What does that mean? It means that people who cross the Mensa family tend to regret it. It means that 18 years is a long time to hold a grudge, and grudges make people vulnerable. It means that Amara Osei should be very careful about what threats she makes and what doors she opens. Samuel picked up his phone again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Some of us still care about building this empire instead of tearing it down over childhood promises and village drama. Kofi left the office feeling more confused than when he'd entered. His uncle's explanations were reasonable, his anger justifiable. But something didn't sit right. The way Samuel had reacted to Lagos, the casual acceptance of Madison's affair, the cold threat at the end, none of it matched the man who'd been Kofi's mentor and hero. Back in his own office, Kofi made a call to a private investigator he'd used once before for a corporate espionage case. I need you to look into two people. Amara Osei and Samuel Mensa. I need to know everything. Financial records, travel history, communications, the works. Samuel Mensa? Your uncle. The investigator sounded surprised. Yes. This is going to be expensive and complicated. He's a co-founder of your company, which means I don't care about expensive. I need the truth. How long? Give me 72 hours for preliminary findings. Full investigation will take longer. Start with Lagos. The bridge collapsed 5 years ago. I need to know if our traffic control software had anything to do with it. The investigator was quiet for a moment. Mr. Mensa, if there was wrongdoing related to that incident, investigating it could open you up to serious legal liability. I understand. Do it anyway. After hanging up, Kofi sat in his office as his city moved below him, millions of people going about their lives, unaware that his entire world was crumbling. In the span of 12 hours, everything he believed about his life, his success, his family had been called into question. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Day 1 of 7. I hope you're making the right choice. By the way, you might want to check your personal investment account. The one Samuel manages for you. Ask yourself why a third of your wealth disappeared last month. With shaking hands, Kofi pulled up his investment portfolio on his computer. The account Samuel had set up for him years ago, the one his uncle managed because Kofi was too busy with the technology side to worry about finances. The account that should have held $30 million. The account that now held $20 million. $10 million. Gone. Kofi grabbed his phone and called his personal banker. I need to know where $10 million from my investment account went last month. Mr. Mensa, I'd have to pull the records, but I believe Mr. Samuel Mensah initiated a transfer. He has full authorization on that account per your standing instructions. Transfer to where? I'll need to call you back with those details, but I believe it was to an offshore account. A business expense, according to the documentation. Kofi hung up and stared at his computer screen. Maybe there was a legitimate explanation. Maybe it was a business expense, a deal he'd forgotten about, something perfectly innocent. Or maybe Amara was telling the truth. And if she was telling the truth about this, what else was she right about? His phone buzzed again. Another text from Amara. Still laughing, Kofi? He wasn't laughing. He wasn't anywhere close to laughing. Because for the first time in 18 years, he was starting to wonder if the little girl who'd promised to be his wife had grown up to be the only person in his life who wasn't lying to him. And that thought was more terrifying than anything else she'd threatened. The next 2 days passed in a blur of anxiety and investigation. Kofi went through the motions at work, attended meetings, made decisions, but his mind was elsewhere, diving through financial records, old emails, anything that might confirm or deny Amara's accusations. He didn't confront Samuel again. Instead, he watched his uncle with new eyes, noting things he'd never paid attention to before. The expensive watches that appeared every few months. The casual mention of a small place in the Cayman Islands. The way Samuel's assistant nervously avoided certain questions about his schedule. Madison called 17 times. Kofi ignored every call. He wasn't ready to face her, wasn't sure what he'd say when he did. Part of him wanted to believe his uncle was right, that she'd come to her senses, that the affair with Marcus meant nothing, that their marriage could work as a strategic partnership even without love. But another part of him, the part that remembered being a boy in Kpando with stars in his eyes and dreams of success, felt sick at the thought of building a life on such cold calculations. On the third night after Amara's appearance, Kofi sat alone in his penthouse apartment, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, when his doorbell rang. Security hadn't called up, which meant whoever it was had gotten past the front desk somehow. He opened the door to find Amara standing there in jeans and a simple white blouse, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the designer gown and heels, she looked younger, more like the girl he remembered, but the steel in her eyes remained. "How did you get up here?" he asked. "I told security I was your fiancé. Showed them some doctored photos from the engagement party." She shrugged. "People see what they expect to see. May I come in?" He should have said no. Should have called security, had her removed, maintained professional distance. Instead, he stepped aside and let her enter. Amara walked through his apartment slowly, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the modern furniture that cost more than most people's annual salary, the art on the walls. "So this is how billionaires live," she said softly. "It's beautiful, Kofi. Really beautiful. You didn't come here to admire my view." "No, I didn't." She turned to face him. "I came because you've been investigating me. I have alerts set up, people watching. I know you hired a private investigator to look into both me and your uncle." "You're stalking me." "I'm protecting myself," she corrected. "There's a difference. I've spent 18 years preparing for this, Kofi. I'm not going to let it fall apart because I got careless. 18 years preparing to blackmail me into marriage. Do you hear how crazy that sounds? Does it sound crazier than the truth?" Amara moved to his window, looking out over the city lights. "Do you want to know what really happened after you left Kpando? The truth, not the sanitized version your uncle fed you." Despite himself, Kofi nodded. "The first year, we were fine. Your mother got money, my mother got money, a few other families got help. Not a lot, but enough to make a difference. Uncle Samuel would come to the village every few months, distribute envelopes, tell everyone how proud of you he was." Amara's voice was steady, but Kofi could hear the emotion underneath. Then the payments started coming less frequently. Every 6 months instead of every 3. Then once a year. Then they stopped completely. I never stopped sending money. I know that now. But we didn't know it then. We just knew that Brother Kofi, the village's great hope, had forgotten us. She pressed her hand against the window glass. My mother got sick when I was 9. Nothing serious at first, just a fever, some weakness. But it didn't go away. She needed tests, medicine, maybe a hospital. But there was no money. You would have helped, I know. But we didn't know how to reach you. Uncle Samuel said you were too busy with your studies, that you'd said the village needed to learn to stand on its own feet. He made it sound like you'd outgrown us, like we were an embarrassment you wanted to forget. Kofi felt sick. That's not what I said. I never said that. I know. But he was convincing. And we were desperate. Amara turned to look at him. Your mother died when I was 12, Kofi. Did you know that? The room spun. What? No. Uncle Samuel said she was fine, that she'd died of a stroke. Quick, they said. She went to sleep and didn't wake up. Amara's voice was gentle now, almost kind. I'm sorry. I thought you knew. Kofi sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. His mother. Dead for 13 years, and he'd never known. All those years of sending money he'd thought was keeping her safe, comfortable. All those brief phone calls with Samuel where he'd asked about her and been told she was fine. Why didn't anyone tell me? His voice cracked. Samuel said he did. He told everyone in the village that you knew, that you'd been informed. When you didn't come back for the funeral, people said it was proof you'd changed. That America had taken the boy we knew and replaced him with someone cold. I would have come back. I would have. Kofi couldn't finish. The grief was too fresh, too raw, even after all these years. Amara knelt beside his chair, her hand resting lightly on his arm. I know. That's why I'm here, Kofi. Not to hurt you, though I know it seems that way. I'm here because someone needs to tell you the truth about what's been done in your name. Why you? Why not anyone else from the village? Because I'm the only one who made it out. She stood, pacing his living room. After my mother died, I had nothing. I was 13, alone, living with an aunt who didn't want me. But I remembered what you told me once, that education was the way out, that knowledge was power. So I worked. I studied. I begged teachers to give me extra lessons. I won scholarships. I clawed my way to the University of Ghana, then to business school in London. How did you afford? I worked 3 jobs. I tutored rich kids whose parents had more money than sense. I did whatever I had to do. Amara's voice was fierce. And the whole time, I kept my promise to you. The promise that 7-year-old girl made about being your wife someday. People thought I was crazy. They said I was chasing a ghost, that you'd never remember me. But I didn't care. Amara. Let me finish. She held up a hand. About 5 years ago, I was working in London for an investment firm. One of our clients was a Nigerian infrastructure company, the same company that built the Lagos Bridge. I was assigned to audit their accounts after the collapse, looking for any financial irregularities that might indicate negligence. Kofi's blood ran cold. And I found irregularities. Lots of them. Bribes, falsified inspections, cut corners. But I also found something else. Evidence that the traffic control software, the system that was supposed to manage weight distribution and traffic flow on the bridge, had failed catastrophically 30 minutes before the collapse. And the software was made by Mensa Technologies. That's impossible. Our system was tested, certified. Your system had a bug. A critical flaw in how it calculated weight distribution during peak traffic hours. The Nigerian engineers reported it during testing. They sent 3 separate emails to your company detailing the problem. Amara pulled out her phone, scrolling through files. Your uncle received all 3 emails. He ignored them. Instead, he paid the Nigerian officials to approve the system anyway and falsified the testing reports. She held out her phone. Kofi took it with trembling hands and began reading. Email after email, report after report, all laying out a clear pattern of negligence and cover-up. And Samuel's name was on everything. When the bridge collapsed and people started investigating, Samuel paid more bribes. He had the emails deleted, the reports buried, the engineers silenced. Amara's voice was quiet but relentless. 47 people died, Kofi. And your uncle made sure no one would ever connect those deaths to Mensa Technologies. Why didn't you go to the authorities? If you had this evidence. I tried. I filed reports with my firm, with regulators, with anyone who would listen. And do you know what happened? She smiled bitterly. Nothing. Your uncle has powerful friends, Kofi. People who made my reports disappear, who threatened my career, who made it very clear that if I kept pushing, I'd be the one who got buried. I was fired from my job, blacklisted in the industry. For 2 years, I couldn't get work anywhere in finance. So you decided to blackmail me instead? I decided to bring the evidence directly to the one person who might actually care. Amara took her phone back. You built Mensa Technologies to help people, Kofi. I've read every interview you've ever given. You talk about using technology to make the world better, to lift up communities like the one you came from. Your uncle has turned that dream into a machine for making money at any cost. I'm giving you a chance to fix it. By marrying you? By choosing me over him. She sat down across from Kofi, her expression serious. I don't need to marry you, Kofi. That was dramatic flair, I suppose. A way to get your attention, to make you take me seriously. What I really need is for you to take control of your own company, to remove Samuel from power, and to make things right, both in Lagos and back home in Pando. Then why the marriage ultimatum? Why the threats? Because Samuel will fight you. He'll call me a liar, discredit my evidence, turn your board and your investors against you. You'll need an ally, someone who understands what's at stake, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. Amara leaned forward. I've spent 18 years preparing for this fight, Kofi. I know Samuel's secrets, his tactics, his weaknesses. With me beside you, as your wife, as your partner, we can beat him. Without me, he'll destroy you and bury the truth forever. Kofi stared at her, this woman who'd transformed herself from a village girl into a corporate warrior, all in pursuit of a childhood promise and a mission for justice. It was insane. It was manipulative. It was dangerous. It was also, he was beginning to realize, his only option. What about Madison? He asked quietly. What about her? Amara raised an eyebrow. She doesn't love you, Kofi. She's marrying you for your money and your connections. I'm offering you something different. A partner who actually understands where you came from, who shares your values, who wants to help you become the man you always meant to be. You don't know me. We haven't seen each other in 18 years. I know you better than anyone in your life right now. I've studied you, followed your career, read everything you've written. I know you donate anonymously to schools in Ghana. I know you cry at movies with sad endings. I know you still eat fufu with your hands, even though you own a penthouse in Manhattan. She smiled, softer now. I know you, Kofi Mensa. The question is, do you know yourself anymore? Before he could answer, his phone rang. The private investigator. Mr. Mensa, I have preliminary findings. You're going to want to hear this. Put it on speaker, Amara said. Kofi hesitated, then did. Go ahead. I've confirmed that Samuel Mensa has been systematically embezzling from your personal accounts for at least 10 years. The 10 million that disappeared last month is just the latest in a series of transfers. In total, I estimate he's taken somewhere between $50 and $70 million. The room felt like it was closing in. $70 million. There's more, the investigator continued. I found records of the payments you sent to Ghana. Every single one was redirected to accounts controlled by Samuel. None of the money reached the intended recipients. He also established a shell corporation in your name that's being investigated for fraud in 3 countries. In my name. Kofi's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. If the investigations proceed, you'll likely face criminal charges unless you can prove you weren't involved in the company's operations. Which might be difficult, since your signature is on multiple documents. Forged signatures, Amara added. I have handwriting analysis to prove it, but it won't matter unless we move first. The investigator cleared his throat. There's one more thing. I haven't had time to confirm this yet, but there are rumors that Samuel is planning to push you out of the company entirely. Something about a vote of no confidence at the next board meeting. He's been quietly buying up shares through intermediaries and convincing other board members that you've become unstable. Kofi hung up and sat in silence, processing everything. His uncle, the man he'd trusted, admired, loved, had been systematically destroying him for years. Stealing his money, ruining his reputation, setting him up for criminal charges. And now planning to take the company they'd built together. 4 days left, Amara said softly. What's it going to be, Kofi? Are you going to keep protecting the man who's been betraying you, or are you going to let me help you fight back? He looked at her, this fierce woman who'd kept a child's promise for 18 years, who'd sacrificed everything for a chance at justice, who was offering him an alliance wrapped in a marriage proposal. If I agree to this, he said slowly, if I break off the engagement with Madison and publicly announce I'm marrying you instead, what happens to Samuel? We expose everything. The embezzlement, Lagos, the stolen money from your family. We turn over evidence to the authorities and let justice take its course. He'll go to prison. He should go to prison. He's a criminal, Kofi. A very sophisticated, very dangerous criminal who's been using your name and your company to line his pockets while good people suffered. He's also my uncle. My family. Amara's expression softened. I know. And that's what makes him so effective. He knows you'll hesitate because of loyalty, because of gratitude, because of love. That's why he's been able to get away with it for so long. She reached out and took his hand. But Kofi, your real family, your mother, Auntie Efua, everyone back in Pando who believed in you, they're the ones who've suffered. Don't you owe them justice? He did. God help him, he did. I need to think, Kofi said finally. You have 4 days. Amara stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it had to be this way. I'm sorry I couldn't just knock on your door and say hello, couldn't give you time to process everything. But Samuel's moving fast, and we're running out of time. If we don't act soon, he'll have complete control of your company and your life. And then no one will ever know the truth. After she left, Kofi stood at his window, looking out over the glittering city that had been his home for 18 years. Somewhere down there, millions of people were living their lives, making choices, building futures. And up here, he was faced with an impossible decision. Trust the uncle who'd betrayed him or ally with a woman who was essentially blackmailing him into marriage. Protect his company or seek justice for the dead. Honor his engagement to Madison or break a promise to pursue an alliance with someone he barely knew. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. By the way, you might want to ask Madison where she was last Tuesday night. The Four Seasons, room 2847, if you're curious. I have photos if you need proof. The choice should be getting easier now. Kofi closed his eyes. The choice wasn't getting easier. If anything, it was getting harder. Because the more he learned about his life, the more he realized how little of it had ever really been his. And the woman who was offering him a way out was the same 7-year-old girl he'd once patted on the head and dismissed with a laugh. If this was karma, it had a vicious sense of humor. By the way, if you're enjoying this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. It helps me understand our amazing global audience. Also, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Trust me, things are about to get even more intense. Now, back to Kofi's impossible choice. The next morning, Kofi did something he hadn't done in years. He called in sick to work. He needed space from Samuel, from the office, from everything that reminded him of the lie his life had become. Instead, he drove north out of the city to a small town in upstate New York where his college roommate, David, now lived with his family. David was one of the few people in Kofi's life who'd known him before the money, before the success, before everything got complicated. They'd shared a cramped dorm room, survived on ramen noodles and ambition, and built their first software programs on computers so old they should have been in museums. "Man, you look terrible," David said when he opened the door, then immediately pulled Kofi into a hug. "Come in. Sarah's at work and the kids are at school. We can talk." Over coffee in David's modest kitchen, such a contrast to Kofi's gleaming penthouse, the whole story came tumbling out. Amara's appearance, the accusations against Samuel, the evidence of embezzlement and worse, the ultimatum. All of it. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. When Kofi finally fell silent, exhausted from the telling, David let out a low whistle. "So let me get this straight. Your uncle has been stealing from you for years, let your mother die without telling you, covered up a bridge collapse that killed dozens of people, and is now planning to force you out of your own company. And a woman you haven't seen since she was 7 is offering to help you fight back if you marry her instead of your cheating fiancé." David shook his head. "Your life is like a bad telenovela." Despite everything, Kofi laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's one way to put it. The real question is, do you believe her? This Amara. I want to say no. I want to say she's a con artist, that everything she's told me is lies designed to manipulate me." Kofi stared into his coffee. "But the evidence I've seen so far backs up her story. The investigator confirmed the embezzlement. The offshore accounts exist. The money I sent home never reached anyone." "What about Lagos?" "I haven't verified that yet. But the emails she showed me looked real. And they match Samuel's writing style, his way of handling problems. Throw money at them until they go away." David was quiet for a moment. "You know what bothers me most about this whole situation? It's not the money or even the criminal stuff, though that's bad enough. It's that your uncle let you believe you'd abandoned your family. He let you carry that guilt for years, guilt that wasn't even real." Kofi hadn't thought about it that way, but David was right. All those nights he'd lain awake wondering if he was doing enough, if he should send more money, if he should go back to visit more often. The nagging sense that success had cost him his connection to home. All manufactured by Samuel. "What should I do?" Kofi asked. "About which part? The uncle, the fiancé, or the marriage proposal from a stranger?" "All of it." David stood and refilled their coffee cups. "Okay, let's break it down. Samuel first. If even half of what Amara says is true, he needs to go. Not just out of the company, but to prison. You can't protect him, man. Not after what he's done. He's family. He stopped being family when he started stealing from you and letting your mother die alone." David's voice was firm. "I know it's hard, but you have to separate the man who brought you to America from the man who's been betraying you ever since. They're not the same person, or maybe they are, and you just never saw his true face before." Kofi nodded slowly. Deep down, he knew David was right. As for Madison, dude, why are you even still engaged to her? You don't love her. She doesn't love you. She's cheating on you with your CFO. This should be the easiest decision of all. Her father is a senator who was using you for your money and your inspiring immigrant story. You don't need him, Kofi. You never did. That was Samuel's strategy, not yours. So I should break off the engagement. Yesterday. You should have broken it off yesterday. David paused. Which brings us to Amara. The most complicated part. Is it, though? David leaned against the counter. Let's look at what we actually know about her. She kept a promise for 18 years. She educated herself, built a career, sacrificed everything to get to you. She has evidence of wrongdoing that she could have sold to the press or used for personal gain, but instead she's offering to help you fix things. Yeah, the marriage ultimatum is dramatic and kind of insane, but maybe that's what it takes to get through to you. You think I should marry her? I think you should get to know her. Really know her, not just the dramatic entrances and ultimatums. David sat back down. Here's what I see. Amara is smart, determined, and has a code of honor. Otherwise she'd have destroyed you already instead of giving you a choice. Those are good qualities in a partner. Better than a beautiful face and political connections, anyway. She's blackmailing me. Is she? Or is she forcing you to face truths you've been avoiding? David held up a hand before Kofi could argue. I'm not saying her methods are great. They're not. But sometimes people need a push to do the right thing. Maybe this is your push. What if she's just as bad as Samuel? What if this is all some elaborate con to get access to my money? Then you'll figure it out and deal with it. But Kofi, listen to your gut. When you talk about Samuel, I hear anger and betrayal. When you talk about Amara, I hear something else. Curiosity. Respect, even. You're intrigued by her. Kofi wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. There was something about Amara. Her fierce intelligence, her unwavering determination, the way she transformed herself from a village girl into a force to be reckoned with. It reminded him of his own journey, his own transformation. What would you do? Kofi asked. If you were in my position? David thought for a long moment. I'd take Amara up on her offer. Not because of the marriage ultimatum necessarily, but because she's the only person in your life right now who's being honest with you. She's showing you who she really is, both the good and the bad. Can you say that about anyone else around you? He couldn't. Kofi drove back to the city with David's words echoing in his head. By the time he reached Manhattan, it was late afternoon, and he'd made a decision. He called Amara. I want to meet, he said when she answered. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere we can talk without drama or ultimatums. Okay. She sounded surprised. Where? You remember that picture of Pando I keep in every interview? The one of the market square. The one with your mother selling tomatoes. Of course. There's a Ghanaian restaurant in Brooklyn that has almost the exact same setup. Market stalls, traditional food, even the smell is right. Meet me there at 7. We'll eat together, talk. No threats, no evidence, no dramatic reveals. Just two people from the same place trying to figure out if they can trust each other. There was a long pause. Okay. 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Kofi spent the next few hours preparing. He called Madison and asked her to meet him at his apartment at 6. That conversation couldn't wait any longer. She arrived in a cloud of expensive perfume and righteous indignation. Finally. Do you know how embarrassing this has been? You've ignored my calls for 3 days. My father is furious. The wedding planner is beside herself. And people keep asking me who that woman was at the party, and I have no idea what to tell them. We need to talk, Kofi said quietly. Something in his tone made her pause. About what? About us. About Marcus. The color drained from Madison's face. I don't know what you're talking about. The Four Seasons. Room 2847. Last Tuesday night. Kofi pulled out his phone and showed her the photos Amara had sent. Madison and Marcus Webb entering a hotel room together, their body language leaving no doubt about their intentions. Madison stared at the photos, then at him, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Finally, she sank onto his couch. How long have you known? Does it matter? I suppose not. She looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, Madison looked genuinely vulnerable. Are you going to tell my father? No. This is between us. Kofi sat across from her. I'm breaking off the engagement, Madison. Not because of Marcus, though that doesn't help, but because we both know this marriage was never about love. It was about strategy, connections, appearances. And I can't do that anymore. You'll lose my father's support. The defense contracts. I don't care. Don't be stupid, Kofi. This is about more than just us. This is about your company, your future. My company was built on lies and betrayals. Maybe it's time to start over with truth. He pulled off his engagement ring and set it on the table between them. I'm sorry, Madison. I'm sorry I wasn't honest with you from the start about what I could and couldn't give you. But this ends now. Madison stared at the ring, then picked it up, turning it over in her fingers. This is about that woman from the party, isn't it? Amara. This is about me figuring out who I want to be. She got to you. Whatever she said, whatever she showed you, she manipulated you into this. Maybe. Or maybe she just opened my eyes to things I should have seen a long time ago. Kofi stood. I hope you find what you're looking for, Madison. I really do. But it's not with me. She left without another word, taking the ring with her. Kofi stood at his window, watching the sun set over the city, feeling lighter than he had in days. One decision made. One less lie in his life. At 7 o'clock, he walked into Auntie Grace's kitchen in Brooklyn and found Amara already there, sitting at a table in the back. She dressed simply, a traditional Kent cloth wrapped around her waist, a plain white top. No makeup, no jewelry, just herself. You came, he said, sitting down across from her. You asked me to. No ultimatums, remember. The restaurant owner, Auntie Grace herself, appeared with a knowing smile. Ah, young love. What can I bring you? Fufu and light soup, they said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. With extra goat meat, Amara added. And plenty of pepper, Kofi finished. Auntie Grace laughed. 2 people from home. I can always tell. I'll bring you the best I have. After she left, Kofi and Amara sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The restaurant smelled like his childhood, palm oil and ginger, fermented cassava and spices he couldn't name but recognized in his bones. I broke off the engagement, Kofi said finally. Amara's eyes widened. Because I told you to? Because it was the right thing to do. Madison and I were never going to work. I think we both knew that from the start, but we were too caught up in what the marriage represented to think about what it actually was. I'm sorry. Are you? That's what you wanted, isn't it? I wanted you to stop living a lie. Whether that meant ending things with Madison or not, that was your choice to make. Amara folded her hands on the table. I know my methods have been harsh, Kofi. I know I've pushed you, manipulated you, forced you into corners. But everything I've told you is true. Everything I've shown you is real. I believe you. About Samuel, about the money, about all of it. He paused as Auntie Grace brought their food, steaming bowls of soup with perfectly pounded fufu on the side. But I need to understand something. Why marriage? Why not just come to me with the evidence, help me deal with Samuel, and go your separate way? Amara broke off a piece of fufu, rolled it in her fingers, dipped it in the soup, the exact way Kofi's mother had taught him when he was small. Do you believe in destiny? That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She ate the fufu, closing her eyes briefly. When I was 7 and you left, I made you a promise. At the time, it was just a child's fantasy. Marry the handsome big brother who was going to America. But after you left, after everything fell apart, that promise became something else. It became a goal. A purpose. You spent 18 years preparing to marry someone you barely knew. I spent 18 years becoming someone worthy of the promise I made. Somewhere along the way, it stopped being about you specifically and started being about what you represented. Hope, success, the idea that someone from our village could make it in the wider world. You were proof that dreams could come true. Amara looked directly at him, and he saw the truth in her eyes. But then I learned what Samuel had done, how he'd stolen your success and used it for his own gain. And I realized that you weren't just a symbol anymore. You were a victim too. Someone who needed saving just as much as the rest of us. So yes, Kofi, I want to marry you. Not because of a childhood promise, but because I think we can help each other become the people we were always meant to be. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Is it crazier than marrying someone for political connections? Is it crazier than building a life on lies? She smiled. At least I'm honest about what I want and why I want it. They ate in silence for a while, the food bringing back memories of home, of a simpler time before everything got complicated. Finally, Kofi set down his spoon. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll marry you. He held up a hand before she could respond. But not because you're blackmailing me. Not because of ultimatums or threats or evidence. I'll marry you because David was right. You're the only person in my life right now who's being completely honest with me. And because I think maybe, just maybe, we can build something real out of all this chaos. Amara's eyes filled with tears, the first real emotion he'd seen from her beyond determination and steel. You mean it. I mean it. But I have conditions. Name them. We take down Samuel together. All the evidence, everything you have, we turn it over to the authorities and let justice happen. Agreed. We do this right. Not a shotgun wedding, not a publicity stunt. We take time to actually get to know each other, to see if this crazy idea can actually work. How much time? 6 months. We announce an engagement, we work together to clean up the mess Samuel made, and we see if we can build a real partnership. If at the end of 6 months we both still want this, we get married. If not, we walk away as friends and allies. Amara considered this, then nodded slowly. 6 months. But Kofi, I should warn you, I don't give up easily. If I'm committing to this, I'm committing fully. I'm not going to be your partner in business only. I'm going to fight for this relationship, for us, with everything I have. I wouldn't expect anything less. Kofi held out his hand across the table. Partners. She took his hand, her grip firm and sure. Partners. They finished their meal, talking about everything and nothing. Memories of Pando, stories from their separate journeys, dreams for the future. For the first time since Amara had walked into his engagement party, Kofi felt like he could breathe. As they left the restaurant, Amara paused. There's one more thing you should know before we go any further. What? I'm not doing this alone. There are people from Pando, people who've been hurt by Samuel's actions, who are watching what happens next. If we fail, if Samuel gets away with everything he's done, they'll release the information themselves. I won't be able to stop them. So the ultimatum is still there, just one step removed. The truth has a way of coming out, Kofi. I'm just trying to make sure it comes out in a way that helps rather than destroys. She squeezed his hand. But I meant what I said, I want this to work. For both of us. Kofi walked her to her car, a modest Honda Civic that was such a contrast to the woman he'd seen at the engagement party that he almost laughed. So which is the real you? The woman in the emerald gown or the woman who drives a 10-year-old Honda? Both. Neither. Amara smiled. I'm whoever I need to be to survive. But with you, I'd like to try being just myself. After she drove away, Kofi stood on the Brooklyn street, the sounds of the city washing over him. In less than a week, his entire life had been turned upside down. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. Now came the hard part, confronting Samuel and dismantling everything they'd built together. But he wouldn't be doing it alone. The next morning, Kofi arrived at Mensa Technologies headquarters with Amara beside him. They'd spent the night at his apartment, separately, in different rooms, planning their strategy. Now, dressed in matching power suits, they looked like exactly what they were about to become, a united front. Jennifer's eyes widened when she saw them walk in together. Mr. Mensa, I wasn't expecting. Is this the woman from the party? This is Amara Osei, Kofi said calmly. My fiancée. She'll be working closely with me on some company matters. Please arrange a visitor's badge for her and add her to my calendar access. Your fiancé? But I thought, Madison. Madison and I have ended our engagement. Please draft a press release announcing my engagement to Amara. We'll review it this afternoon. Jennifer looked like she wanted to ask 1,000 questions but settled for a professional nod. Of course, Mr. Mensa. Should I inform Mr. Samuel Mensa? No need. I'll tell him myself. They walked down the corridor toward Samuel's office, their footsteps synchronized on the marble floor. Kofi could feel the tension radiating through his body, but Amara's presence beside him was steadying. She'd been preparing for this moment for 18 years. He could do this for one day. Samuel was on the phone when they entered, but his expression shifted from casual to alert when he saw Amara. He ended the call quickly. Kofi. And Miss Osei, I believe. I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk, Uncle. All three of us. Kofi closed the door behind them and locked it. Samuel's eyes narrowed at the sound of the lock clicking. Is that really necessary? I think it is. Kofi moved to the window, unable to look at his uncle directly yet. I've spent the last few days investigating Amara's claims. The embezzlement, the stolen money from Kpando, Lagos. All of it. And Samuel's voice was carefully neutral. And she's telling the truth. About everything. The silence in the room was deafening. Samuel looked from Kofi to Amara and back again, his expression unreadable. I see. And what exactly do you plan to do with this revelation? That depends on you, Amara said, speaking for the first time. She pulled out a folder from her briefcase and set it on Samuel's desk. These are copies of all the evidence I've gathered. Bank statements, emails, testimony from witnesses in Lagos, records from Kpando. Everything needed to send you to prison for a very long time. Samuel didn't even glance at the folder. Blackmail. How unoriginal. Not blackmail. An offer. Kofi finally turned to face his uncle. You resign from Mensa Technologies immediately. You transfer back every dollar you've stolen from me, from the families in Kpando, from everyone you've hurt. You cooperate with an independent investigation into the Lagos incident and take full responsibility for the cover-up. And in exchange? In exchange, I won't press criminal charges. You'll be ruined financially, your reputation will be destroyed, but you won't go to prison. Kofi's voice was steady despite the pain in his chest. It's more than you deserve, but it's what I can live with. Samuel laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You think you can threaten me? You think I've survived this long by being careless? He stood, buttoning his jacket. I built this company, Kofi. Not you. You were just a talented programmer with pretty ideals. I'm the one who made the hard decisions, who navigated the real world, who turned your little software dreams into a billion-dollar empire. By lying, stealing, and letting people die. By doing what was necessary. Samuel's composure cracked, anger flooding through. You want to know why I kept the money from Kpando? Because those people would have wasted it on short-term solutions instead of long-term growth. I invested it properly, used it to build something lasting. Yes, I kept some for myself. I earned it. I earned every dollar through my work, my sacrifice. You let my mother die. Your mother was sick anyway. The money wouldn't have saved her, just prolonged the inevitable. I made a strategic decision not to burden you with grief during a critical phase of the company's development. Kofi felt rage building in his chest, hot and choking. Strategic decision? She was my mother. And she would have wanted you to succeed above all else. I knew that, even if you didn't. Samuel moved around his desk, his voice softening, becoming persuasive. Kofi, don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built over sentiment and guilt. So I made some hard choices. That's what leaders do. We can move forward from this. Send Miss Osei away with whatever payment she wants. Patch things up with Madison. The board meeting is in 3 days, and together we can. There's not going to be a board meeting, Amara interrupted. At least not the one you're planning. Kofi has already contacted every board member privately. They've seen the evidence. They've been briefed on the situation. And they've unanimously agreed to accept your resignation. Samuel's face went white. That's impossible. I have allies on that board, people who don't want to go down with you, Kofi said quietly. Once they saw the evidence, once they understood the legal liability involved, they made their own strategic decisions. I'm sorry, Uncle. It's over. For a long moment, Samuel just stared at them. Then something shifted in his expression, something cold and calculating that Kofi had never seen before. You think you've won. You think you've outsmarted me. He moved to his desk, pulling out his own folder. But I've been preparing for this possibility too. He threw the folder at Kofi's feet. Papers scattered across the floor, contracts, agreements, documents with Kofi's signature on them. Every shady deal, every questionable transaction, every corner cut to make this company successful. Your name is on all of it. If I go down, you go down with me. Those deaths in Lagos? The official investigation will show that you personally approved the faulty software, that you ignored the engineer's warnings, that you prioritized profit over safety. Those signatures are forged, Amara said calmly. Prove it. In court. While the media tears Kofi apart, while the families of the dead sue him into oblivion, while every business relationship he has crumbles under the weight of scandal. Samuel smiled, ugly and triumphant. You wanted to play hardball, nephew? Let's see how you handle the real game. Kofi felt his certainty wavering. Even if the signatures were forged, even if they could eventually prove it, the damage would be done. Samuel was right. The media, the lawsuits, the investigations would destroy everything. But Amara stepped forward, her voice steady. You're forgetting something, Samuel. I didn't come here unprepared. I have testimony from your assistant, the one you paid to forge those documents. I have recordings of you bragging about the Lagos cover-up to business associates. I have evidence that you've been planning to frame Kofi for years, building this insurance policy in case he ever caught on to what you were doing. She pulled out her phone, pressing play. Samuel's voice filled the room, recorded at what sounded like a restaurant or bar. The beauty of it is, if anything ever goes wrong, Kofi takes the fall. His name, his signature, his company. I've made sure of it. He's so busy playing the visionary that he never notices what I'm really building. Samuel's face went from white to gray. Where did you get that? From someone who works for you. Someone who's been documenting everything for the past 2 years, waiting for the right moment to come forward. Amara's smile was sharp. You're not the only one who plans ahead, Mr. Mensah. The difference is, my plans don't involve destroying innocent people. Kofi picked up the papers from the floor, looking at his forged signature on document after document. The handwriting was good, very good, but now that he knew to look for it, he could see the small differences, the way the K curved slightly wrong, the spacing between letters. How long? He asked Samuel. How long have you been planning to betray me? Samuel sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. From the beginning. Or maybe not the beginning. Maybe it started slowly, little by little, each compromise leading to the next until I couldn't remember where the line was anymore. He looked up at Kofi, and for a moment, there was something like regret in his eyes. I did bring you to America, you know. I did pay for your education. I did believe in you once. And then you got successful, and I realized I was always going to be in your shadow. The uncle, the helper, the one who made it possible but never got credit for it. So I started taking what I felt I was owed. And once I started, it was easy to justify more. And more. Until this became normal. The Lagos deaths, Amara said quietly. Were those part of the plan? Samuel's face hardened again. Those were an accident. A tragic accident that I had nothing to do with. The engineers warned you about the software bug. They worried too much. The probability of failure was minimal. It was a calculated risk. 47 people died because of your calculated risk, Kofi said, his voice breaking. 47 people with families, lives, futures, gone because you couldn't admit the software had a problem. Business involves risks. Sometimes those risks have consequences. That's the real world, Kofi, the world I protected you from while you played with your code and your ideals. Samuel stood, straightening his tie. So what now? You have your evidence, your moral superiority. What happens next? Kofi looked at Amara, who nodded slightly. They'd discussed this possibility, planned for it. But actually saying the words was harder than he'd imagined. You resign. Today. You transfer ownership of your shares in the company to a trust that will compensate the victims. The families in Lagos, the people in Pando, everyone you've hurt. You cooperate fully with all investigations. And you leave New York. I don't care where you go, but I never want to see you again. And if I refuse? Then we release everything to the authorities and the press, and you go to prison. Your choice, uncle. You taught me that business is about making strategic decisions. Make yours. Samuel looked at them both for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached for a piece of company letterhead and began writing. His resignation, effective immediately. He signed it with a flourish and handed it to Kofi. I hope you're ready for what comes next, Samuel said quietly. Running this company isn't as easy as you think. Making the hard choices, living with the consequences, it changes you. You'll see. I won't become you. That's what I thought too, once upon a time. Samuel picked up a small photo from his desk, a picture of young Kofi from years ago, fresh-faced and full of hope. I really did believe in you, you know. Part of me still does. Which is why I'm giving you this. He pulled out a USB drive from his desk drawer and handed it to Kofi. Everything. Every account, every transaction, every person I've paid off or worked with over the years. All of it. If you're really going to clean up this mess, you'll need it. Consider it my final lesson. Always keep backup plans. Kofi took the USB drive, not sure whether to believe him. Why? Because you're still my nephew. Because somewhere under all the betrayal and bitterness, I still remember the boy I brought to America. Because maybe, just maybe, you'll succeed where I failed, at being both successful and good. Samuel moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry about your mother. That wasn't strategic. That was cowardice. I knew you'd come back if you knew she was dying, and I couldn't risk losing you to the village. So I let her die alone, and I've regretted it every day since. Then he was gone, walking out of his office and out of Kofi's life, leaving behind 18 years of lies and just enough truth to make forgiveness impossible. Kofi stood in the empty office, holding his uncle's resignation in one hand and the USB drive in the other, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under him. He'd won. Amara had been right, their plan had worked, Samuel was gone. So why did victory feel so much like loss? Amara's hand on his shoulder brought him back. It's over, Kofi. The hard part is done. Is it? He looked at her. Samuel said running the company would change me, that I'd have to make hard choices and live with consequences. What if he's right? What if this is just the beginning of becoming everything I hate? Then I'll be here to remind you who you really are. She took his hand, squeezing gently. That's why we're doing this together. That's why you need someone who knows where you came from and won't let you forget. Partners, remember. Partners, he echoed, but the word felt heavier now, weighted with responsibility and fear. Outside Samuel's former office, the company was already buzzing with news. Jennifer had heard everything. The walls in Executive Row weren't as soundproof as people thought. By noon, every employee knew that Samuel Mensah had resigned and that Kofi was now sole CEO. By evening, the business press would have the story. By tomorrow, the whole world would know. But that night, as Kofi and Amara sat in his apartment reviewing the contents of Samuel's USB drive, dozens of files, hundreds of transactions, a roadmap of corporate corruption that would take months to untangle, he realized something important. For the first time in 18 years, he wasn't alone. Amara worked beside him, her sharp mind cutting through the complexity, organizing, categorizing, planning their next moves. She didn't flinch at the scope of the corruption. She didn't panic at the legal implications. She just worked, steady and determined. You're really good at this, Kofi said around midnight, watching her create a spreadsheet that made sense of Samuel's chaos. She looked up, surprised. At what? At all of it. The investigation, the strategy, the execution. You would have made an incredible corporate detective or lawyer or... I was supposed to be, she said quietly. Before I got blacklisted for going after Samuel the first time. I had offers from top firms, consulting companies, think tanks. And then it all disappeared because I tried to tell the truth about Lagos. I'm sorry. Don't be. It led me here, to this moment. And honestly, she smiled. This is better than any corporate job could have been. This matters. This actually makes a difference. Kofi moved around the table to sit beside her. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Always. When you said you've been planning this for 18 years, when you said you kept your promise about being my wife, how much of that is true, and how much is just strategy? I need to know if this partnership has any chance of becoming something real, or if we're just two people using each other to accomplish our goals. Amara set down her laptop and turned to face him fully. The truth? I don't know. When I was 7, I loved you the way a child loves. Completely, uncritically, forever. When I was 14 and my mother died, I hated you for leaving us, for forgetting us, for having the life I could never have. When I was 20 and discovered what Samuel had done, I felt something else. Determination, purpose, maybe a kind of obsession. She paused, considering her words carefully. Now I see you as a real person, not a symbol or a goal. I see someone brilliant and kind who's been manipulated his whole adult life. I see someone who still eats fufu with his hands and cries at sad movies, who sends anonymous donations to schools and carries guilt that isn't his to carry. And I think I could love that person, given time. If you'll let me. And if I can't, if 6 months from now, we realize this was all just strategy and desperation, then we'll have still done something important together. We'll have brought down a corrupt man and helped a lot of people. That's not nothing, Kofi. He leaned closer, surprising himself. Amara Osei, you are the most complicated woman I've ever met. Is that a compliment? I'm not sure yet. He smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt genuine. But I'm looking forward to finding out. They worked until dawn, building the foundation for what came next. Restitution for the families in Lagos, restoration of support for Pando, restructuring of the company's ethics and oversight. It was overwhelming, exhausting, and strangely hopeful. As the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Kofi realized that Amara had been right about one thing. Sometimes you had to tear everything down to build something real. The little girl who'd promised to be his wife had grown up to be the woman who'd saved his soul. Now they just had to figure out if they could save each other too. 3 weeks later, Kofi stood in the Lagos International Conference Center, facing an audience of 200 people. Families of the victims from the bridge collapse, Nigerian officials, journalists, and activists who'd been demanding answers for 5 years. Amara sat in the front row, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. This was the hardest thing he'd ever done, harder than confronting Samuel, harder than dismantling the lies his life had been built on. This was facing the consequences of choices he hadn't even known he was making. My name is Kofi Mensah, he began, his voice echoing through the silent hall. 5 years ago, my company's software contributed to the collapse of the Lekki Bridge. 47 people died that day. Mothers, fathers, children, friends. People with futures that were stolen from them because of negligence, corporate greed, and a cover-up orchestrated by my uncle and business partner, Samuel Mensah. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Kofi held up his hand, continuing. I stand before you today to take full responsibility for what happened. Not because I knew about the software flaw, I didn't. Not because I approved the cover-up, I had no idea it existed. But because Mensah Technologies is my company, built on my name, and I failed to provide the oversight necessary to prevent this tragedy. A woman in the third row stood up, her face twisted with grief and rage. My husband died on that bridge. He was coming home to us, to me and our 3 children. Your apology means nothing. Nothing can bring him back. You're right, Kofi said quietly. Nothing I say or do can bring back your husband, or any of the 47 people we lost that day. But I'm not here just to apologize. I'm here to tell you what we're doing to make this right. He pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. Mensah Technologies is establishing a compensation fund of $200 million for the victims' families. Each family will receive direct financial support, with additional funds for children's education, healthcare, and small business development. We're also funding the construction of a new bridge, properly engineered this time, with independent oversight at every stage, and a memorial to honor those who were lost. Another voice from the crowd. You think money solves everything? You rich people always think you can buy your way out of consequences. No, I don't think that, Kofi replied. Money won't bring back the dead or erase the pain. But it can provide for the families left behind. It can ensure that children still get educated, that widows and widowers can rebuild their lives, that some good comes from this horror. He paused, looking directly at the audience. But more than that, I'm here to give you the truth. All of it. He pulled out a thick folder of documents. These are the internal emails, the engineering reports, the evidence of the cover-up. Everything Samuel Mensah did to hide the truth is now public record. The Nigerian authorities have this information. International investigators have it. And now, you have it. No more secrets. No more lies. A man in the back stood up, older, distinguished-looking, wearing the collar of a pastor. Mr. Mensah, I am Reverend Okonkwo. My daughter, Chinyu, died on that bridge. She was 23 years old, a teacher, full of life and hope. His voice broke. I want to believe you. I want to believe this is real remorse and not just corporate damage control. But how do we know you won't do what your uncle did? How do we know this isn't just another carefully constructed lie? Kofi stepped away from the podium, moving closer to the audience. You don't. You have no reason to trust me. My company killed your loved ones, and my family covered it up. All I can offer you is transparency going forward and the opportunity to hold me accountable. He gestured to a group of people seated to the side. These are representatives from 3 independent organizations, an international engineering watchdog, a victims' rights group, and a Nigerian transparency initiative. They will oversee every aspect of the compensation fund and the bridge reconstruction. They will have full access to Mensah Technologies' records and operations. And they will report directly to you, the families, quarterly on our progress. They could be bought, like your uncle bought the original investigators, someone called out. They could be, Kofi acknowledged. But I'm also giving each family direct access to me. My personal email, my phone number, my office. You want to verify something? Ask me. You want to check on the fund? Call me. You think something isn't right? Contact me directly. I'm not hiding anymore. Reverend Okonkwo studied him for a long moment. Why now? Why after 5 years? Kofi looked at Amara, who nodded encouragingly. Because someone from my village in Ghana, someone who lost her mother because of my uncle's lies, spent 18 years preparing to confront me with the truth. She gave me a choice. Keep living the lie or face what had been done in my name. I chose truth. And that truth led here, to you, to this moment. This woman, a younger woman called out, standing up. Is she here? Amara stood, and Kofi saw her take a deep breath before speaking. My name is Amara Osei. I'm from Kpando, Ghana. My mother died because money that should have helped our village was stolen. When I investigated where that money went, I found the Lagos cover-up. I found Mr. Mensah's uncle, Samuel, and what he'd done. And I found a man who didn't know his life was built on lies. Why should we believe you're any different from him? The woman asked. You came for revenge, for money. I came for justice, Amara corrected firmly. And yes, I came for revenge initially. But I found something else, a chance to actually help the people hurt by these actions. Mr. Mensah and I are not just business partners. We're engaged to be married. Which means his accountability is my accountability. His company's actions are my responsibility too. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that what happened to you, to your families, never happens again under our watch. The room fell silent. Then Reverend Okonkwo spoke again. You're asking us to believe in you when we have no reason to. You're asking for forgiveness when the wounds are still so fresh. He paused, his eyes glistening with tears. But I am a man of faith. I believe in redemption. I believe people can change. So I will give you a chance, Mr. Mensah. One chance. If you honor what you've said here today, if you truly make this right, then perhaps some good can come from my daughter's death. But if you betray us, if this is just another lie, then God help you. Because we will not be silent again. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. It wasn't forgiveness. Kofi hadn't expected forgiveness and didn't deserve it. But it was a beginning. The meeting continued for another 3 hours. Kofi and Amara answered questions, provided documentation, listened to stories of the loved ones who'd been lost. It was exhausting and heartbreaking and absolutely necessary. When it finally ended, as the families filed out, many stopped to shake Kofi's hand or thank him for coming. Some couldn't even look at him. All of it felt right, the gratitude and the anger, the hope and the skepticism. Back at their hotel room, Kofi collapsed on the couch. Amara brought him water and sat beside him, both of them too drained to speak for a long while. "That was the hardest thing I've ever done," Kofi finally said. "You were brave. You told the truth when it would have been easier to hide behind lawyers and PR statements. I felt like I was going to throw up the entire time." "Me too." Amara smiled weakly. "But we did it. First step toward making things right." Kofi looked at her, this woman who'd turned his life upside down and somehow made it better. "You called yourself my fiancé in there. Not my business partner or my ally. You said we were engaged to be married. We are, aren't we? 6-month trial period, you said. We're about a month in. And how do you think it's going so far?" Amara was quiet for a moment, considering. "Better than I expected, honestly. You're more stubborn than I thought you'd be, and you have this annoying habit of wanting to handle everything yourself. But you're also kinder than I imagined, more willing to admit when you're wrong. I like that about you. I like that you don't let me hide from hard truths. I like that you push me to be better." Kofi took her hand. "I'm starting to think maybe this crazy plan of yours might actually work." "Starting to think?" "Kofi, I knew it would work from the beginning. I've been planning this for 18 years, remember?" They both laughed, and it felt good, a release of tension, a moment of genuine connection in the middle of all the chaos and pain. Kofi's phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer back in New York. "Board meeting tomorrow rescheduled. Marcus Webb has requested emergency session. Something's wrong." The moment of peace shattered. Marcus Webb, Madison's lover, the company's CFO, and one of Samuel's closest allies. Kofi had been so focused on dealing with Lagos that he'd neglected the situation back home. "What is it?" Amara asked, seeing his expression change. "Marcus. He's called an emergency board meeting." Kofi stood, already moving toward his laptop. "This can't be good." They spent the next hour on video calls with board members, trying to understand what was happening. The picture that emerged was troubling. Marcus had discovered irregularities in the compensation fund Kofi had set up. Money that seemed to be missing, transfers that didn't make sense. "He's setting you up," Amara said once they'd finished the calls. "Just like Samuel did. Creating false evidence of wrongdoing to undermine you before you can fully consolidate control." "But I haven't touched that money. Every transaction has been documented, verified. By people Marcus has access to. He's the CFO, Kofi. He can manipulate financial records, create fake transactions, make it look like you're stealing from the very fund you set up to help people." Amara was already pulling up files on her laptop. "We need to get back to New York. Now." They caught the next flight out, landing in Manhattan 36 hours after leaving. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:45, Kofi and Amara walked into the conference room to find Marcus already there, looking confident and professional. "Kofi. Amara." Marcus nodded politely. "Thank you for rushing back. I'm sorry to interrupt your important work in Lagos, but we have a serious problem that needs immediate attention." "What problem would that be, Marcus?" Kofi asked, keeping his voice level. "Irregularities in the Victim Compensation Fund. Approximately $20 million that can't be accounted for. Transfers made to offshore accounts, falsified receipts, forged documentation." Marcus pulled up a presentation. As CFO, it's my responsibility to report financial crimes. And I'm afraid the evidence points to you, Kofi. You and your new fiancé. The other board members filed in, their faces grave. Kofi recognized the setup immediately. Marcus had already briefed them, already planted the seeds of doubt. That's a serious accusation, one board member, Patricia Chen, said carefully. Do you have proof, Marcus? I have extensive documentation. Marcus distributed folders to each board member. Bank statements, transfer orders, email confirmations. All showing that Kofi has been siphoning money from the fund, the same fund he just publicly committed to the Lagos families. It's exactly what Samuel did, except this time, we're catching it early. Kofi felt rage building but forced himself to stay calm. Those documents are forgeries. Just like the ones Samuel created to frame me. Convenient how everyone's always framing you, isn't it? Marcus smiled coldly. Perhaps the simpler explanation is that you're following in your uncle's footsteps. After all, corruption seems to run in the Mensa family. That's enough, Amara said sharply. She pulled out her own laptop, connecting it to the conference room display. Since we're presenting evidence, let me show you all what Marcus has really been doing. She pulled up a series of files, bank records, emails, transaction histories. For the past 3 years, Marcus Webb has been embezzling from Mensa Technologies. Small amounts at first, testing the system, then larger and larger as he got bolder. He's stolen approximately $30 million, hidden in the same offshore accounts he's now trying to attribute to Kofi. Marcus's confident expression faltered. That's absurd. I'm the one who discovered. You're the one who created the appearance of theft to hide your own crimes, Amara continued relentlessly. When Kofi started investigating the company's finances after Samuel resigned, you knew it was only a matter of time before your embezzlement was discovered. So you created a preemptive strike, make it look like Kofi is the thief so no one looks at you. She pulled up more files. Here are the original unaltered financial records showing exactly where that $20 million actually went, to the Lagos Compensation Fund, exactly as intended. And here are the fake documents Marcus created to make it look like theft. Notice the metadata, created yesterday, not weeks ago when the transfers supposedly occurred. The board members leaned forward, examining the evidence. Patricia Chen looked from the documents to Marcus, her expression hardening. Marcus, is this true? Of course not. She's obviously in league with Kofi to what? To catch you stealing. Amara pulled up one final file. This is a recording from 3 weeks ago. Marcus talking to someone about his plan to frame Kofi and take over the company himself. She pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room. Once Kofi's disgraced, the board will need new leadership. Someone stable, someone American, someone who isn't part of the Mensa family drama. I'll position myself as the savior, the one who exposed the corruption. Then I'll have everything. The company, Madison's connections through her father, all of it. The recording continued, laying out Marcus's entire scheme. By the time it ended, his face had gone from flushed to ashen. Where did you get that? He whispered. From someone who works for you. Someone who was tired of covering up your crimes and thought maybe, just maybe, there was still such a thing as justice. Amara closed her laptop. You're fired, Marcus. And you're going to return every dollar you stole, or we press criminal charges. Your choice. The board meeting ended with Marcus escorted out by security, his career and reputation in ruins. The board voted unanimously to confirm Kofi as sole CEO and to approve all his initiatives moving forward. But as Kofi and Amara left the building, he felt no sense of victory, just exhaustion and a growing awareness of how many enemies they'd made. How many more? He asked Amara as they stood on the street. How many more people are going to come after us? As many as it takes, she said simply. Change threatens people, Kofi. Especially people who've benefited from the old corrupt system. They'll keep coming until they realize they can't win, or until we've rebuilt this company into something that can't be corrupted. And you're sure we can do that? She took his hand, squeezing it. I've spent 18 years planning for this. I'm not giving up now. The question is, are you? Kofi looked at her, this fierce, brilliant woman who'd turned his life upside down and somehow made him better for it. No, I'm not giving up. But Amara, I need to know something. What? All this planning, all this preparation. Is there ever going to be a moment where we're not fighting? Where we can just be two people trying to figure out if this relationship can actually work? Amara smiled, softer than he'd ever seen. Maybe. Once we've finished saving your company and making things right in Lagos and Pando. Once we've dealt with whatever other enemies are waiting in the shadows. Maybe then we can focus on being just Kofi and Amara instead of two warriors in a corporate battle. And until then, we fight. Together. 2 months had passed since the confrontation with Marcus Webb. Kofi stood at his office window, watching the sun set over Manhattan, and tried to remember what normal felt like. Every day brought new challenges: restructuring the company, managing the Lagos compensation, rebuilding relationships with clients who'd lost faith after the scandals. But through it all, Amara had been there. Working beside him, challenging him, pushing him to be better. And somewhere in the chaos of corporate reform and public redemption, something unexpected had happened. He'd fallen in love with her. Not the dramatic, thunderbolt kind of love from movies, but the quiet, steady kind that built itself through shared meals at midnight when they were both too tired to go home. Through inside jokes about village life that no one else in Manhattan would understand. Through the way she'd rest her hand on his shoulder when board meetings got tense, a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. The door opened behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know it was her. He'd learned to recognize her footsteps, the subtle scent of her jasmine perfume. "You're brooding again," Amara said, coming to stand beside him. "That's the 3rd time this week. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's actually going better than I expected." He turned to look at her. "The Lagos families are getting their compensation. The new bridge construction started yesterday. The company's stock has stabilized. We're winning, Amara." "Then why do you look so worried?" "Because in 1 month, our 6-month trial period ends. And I need to know where we stand." Amara was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Where do you want us to stand?" "I want," Kofi paused, trying to find the right words. "I want this to be real. Not a business arrangement, not a strategy, not two people using each other to accomplish goals. I want us to actually try being together because we want to be, not because circumstances forced us." "Kofi, let me finish." He took her hands. "I know this started as your plan, your 18-year mission to fulfill a childhood promise. But somewhere along the way, it became something else for me. You became someone I look forward to seeing every morning. Someone whose opinion matters more than anyone else's. Someone I can't imagine my life without." Amara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You're making this very difficult." "Making what difficult?" "Keeping my distance. Staying professional. Remembering that this was supposed to be about justice and redemption, not about—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Not about what?" "Not about falling in love with you, you stubborn man." The words burst out of her, and suddenly she was laughing and crying at the same time. "I had a plan. A perfect plan. Keep things professional, work together to fix everything, and then at the end of 6 months, reevaluate rationally. But you had to go and be kind and honest, and you eat fufu with your hands, and you cry at sad movies, and you care so much about making things right that it hurts to watch sometimes." Kofi felt his heart hammering in his chest. "So you feel the same way?" "Of course I feel the same way. I've been in love with you since I was 7 years old. The question was never whether I loved you. The question was whether you could love me back, the real me, not just the idea of me or the strategic alliance I represented." He pulled her closer. "The real you is the most amazing person I've ever met. The real you is fierce and smart and uncompromising about doing what's right. The real you makes me want to be better every single day." "Kofi." He kissed her. It was their first kiss, and it felt like coming home and starting a journey all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Amara was smiling through her tears. "So I guess the 6-month trial period is going well?" she asked. "I'd say so." Kofi grinned. "Does this mean you'll actually marry me? For real this time, not as strategy or blackmail or fulfilling childhood promises. Are you proposing properly? Because if you are, I have standards. I didn't spend 18 years planning this just to get a casual proposal in your office." Kofi laughed and pulled her toward the door. "Come on. I know exactly what to do." 20 minutes later, they stood in the middle of Auntie Grace's kitchen in Brooklyn. The restaurant was closed for the night, but Auntie Grace herself had opened up for them when Kofi called, a knowing smile on her face. "So the young lovers return," she said warmly. "What can I do for you tonight?" "I need your help with something important," Kofi said. Then, to Amara's surprise, he began speaking in Chui, their shared language from home. He turned to Amara, dropping to one knee right there in the empty restaurant that smelled like palm oil and memories. "Amara Osei, 18 years ago, a little girl told me she would be my wife when she grew up. I laughed because I was young and stupid and couldn't see that she was the most determined person I'd ever meet. That little girl grew up to be a woman who changed my life, who saved me from myself, who showed me what real strength looks like. She became my partner, my ally, my best friend, and the person I want to spend the rest of my life with." He pulled out a ring, not the flashy diamond he'd given Madison, but something different. A simple gold band inlaid with traditional Ghanaian symbols. "This belonged to my mother. Uncle Samuel gave it to me after she died, said she'd wanted me to give it to someone from home, someone who would understand what it meant." His voice broke slightly. "I think she'd be happy knowing it went to you. So Amara, I'm asking properly this time, with no ultimatums or blackmail or strategic alliances. Will you marry me because we love each other? Because we want to build a life together? Because you're the only person I want by my side for whatever comes next?" Amara was crying openly now, not bothering to wipe the tears away. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You really kept your promise." "I'm trying to. So what do you say?" "Yes." She pulled him to his feet. "Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time. Forever." Auntie Grace whooped with joy, and suddenly the restaurant was filled with her family. Cousins and children and neighbors who'd apparently been hiding in the back, waiting for this moment. There was music and dancing and food appearing from nowhere, a spontaneous celebration that felt like home in a way Kofi hadn't experienced in 18 years. As they danced, Amara in his arms, surrounded by people who understood where they came from, Kofi felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe. Or purpose. Or just the simple rightness of being exactly where he was supposed to be. His phone buzzed with a message. He ignored it at first, too caught up in the moment, but it buzzed again. And again. Finally, he checked it. The messages were from Senator Robert Carter, Madison's father. "We need to talk. Urgent. Your past is about to become very public." Another message, "I can help you, but you'll need to end things with that village girl and make amends with Madison. Call me." And a final message, "If you don't respond in 1 hour, I release everything I have to the press. Your choice, Mensa." The music and laughter seemed to fade around Kofi. He showed the messages to Amara, watching her expression harden. "What could he possibly have?" she asked quietly. "I don't know. But he sounds confident." They stepped outside into the cool Brooklyn night. Kofi called the senator, putting the phone on speaker so Amara could hear. "Senator Carter. What's this about?" "Ah, Mensa. I was beginning to think you'd ignore me." The senator's voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of a man used to getting what he wanted. "Let me be direct. My daughter tells me you broke off your engagement for some village girl you barely know. That was a mistake. A serious mistake. With all due respect, my personal life is none of your concern. It is when it affects my political career and my family's reputation." Madison was humiliated. "I was humiliated. And I don't take humiliation lightly." The senator paused for effect. "I've been doing some research into you, Mensa. Into your uncle, your company, your past. And I found some very interesting things. Like what? Like the fact that your immigration status when you first came to America was questionable. Like the fact that your Uncle Samuel made certain payments to certain officials to expedite your visa and green card process. Payments that, if they came to light, could result in your citizenship being revoked and you being deported. Kofi felt his blood run cold. That's not possible. I went through legal channels. Channels that your uncle greased with bribes and falsified documents. I have proof, Mensa. Proof that you're not the inspiring immigrant success story everyone thinks you are. You're here because of corruption and lies. I didn't know about any bribes. I was 18 years old. Doesn't matter. Immigration law is clear. If fraud was involved in obtaining your status, that status can be revoked regardless of whether you knew about it. The senator's voice turned cold. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to publicly apologize to Madison. You're going to end your relationship with Miss Osei. You're going to resume your engagement to my daughter, and you're going to be very generous in your contributions to my upcoming presidential campaign. In exchange, this information stays buried. And if I refuse? Then I contact immigration enforcement, release everything to the media, and watch your entire life unravel. You'll be deported back to Ghana, your company will collapse without you, and all those noble plans for Lagos and Pando will die with your reputation. Kofi closed his eyes, feeling the world spinning around him again. Just when he thought they'd finally won, just when he'd finally found something real and good, another threat emerged. But Amara squeezed his hand, and when he looked at her, he saw not fear but determination. "Tell him no," she whispered. "What?" "Tell him no. We don't negotiate with extortionists anymore. We fight back." Kofi looked at her for a long moment, then back at his phone. "Senator, I'm going to give you the same answer I gave my uncle and Marcus Webb.
No.
I won't be blackmailed. I won't give up the woman I love or compromise my principles because you're angry your daughter got caught cheating and faced consequences. You're making a serious mistake, Mensa." "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." Kofi felt strength flowing through him. "Release whatever you want to the press. Contact immigration. Do your worst. But I'm done hiding from my past, and I'm done letting corrupt men control my life. Whatever happens next, I'll face it with truth and with Amara by my side." He hung up before the senator could respond. For a moment, they just stood there in the Brooklyn night, holding hands, waiting for the world to crash down around them again. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Amara said finally. "Probably both." Kofi laughed, slightly hysterical. "But I meant what I said. I'm done running, done hiding, done letting other people's lies define who I am. So what do we do now?" "Now." Kofi pulled her close. "Now we go back inside, we finish celebrating our engagement, and tomorrow we start figuring out how to fight this. Together." "Together," Amara echoed. "Always together." They returned to the party, to the music and dancing and warmth of community. And if Kofi's smile was a bit forced, if his laughter had an edge of desperation, no one mentioned it. For tonight, at least, they could celebrate love and hope and the possibility of happiness. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tomorrow would bring Senator Carter's threats and immigration investigations and media storms. But tomorrow would also bring Amara beside him, fierce and unstoppable, ready to fight whatever came next. And somehow, that made everything else bearable. Before they left Auntie Grace's that night, surrounded by well-wishers and celebration, Kofi took a moment to really look at Amara, his fiancée, his partner, his future wife. The little girl who'd promised to marry him had kept her word in ways he'd never imagined. Now it was his turn to keep his promise. To build a life worthy of her sacrifice, her determination, her love. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. And that, Kofi realized, was worth fighting for. Hey everyone, we're getting close to the end of this incredible journey. If you've been following Kofi and Amara's story, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps us continue bringing you compelling stories like this one. Also, drop a comment below. Do you think Kofi made the right choice standing up to Senator Carter? Or should he have negotiated? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, let's see how this all unfolds. The news broke the next morning, exactly as Senator Carter had promised. Kofi woke to his phone exploding with notifications, calls from journalists, messages from board members, alerts from news sites all running variations of the same headline: Billionaire tech CEO's immigration status in question. Did Kofi Mensah enter U.S. through fraud? Amara was already awake, sitting at his kitchen table with her laptop, 3 phones, and a thermos of coffee that suggested she'd been up for hours. How bad is it? Kofi asked, pouring himself coffee. Bad. But not as bad as it could be. She turned her laptop to show him. Carter released the documents about Samuel's bribes to immigration officials. The media is running with it, but there's confusion about whether you knew anything about it. Most outlets are being careful to say, allegedly, and questions remain. That won't matter. The damage is done. Immigration enforcement will have to investigate now that it's public. Let them investigate. Amara's voice was calm, steady. Because while Carter was busy digging up dirt on you, I was busy digging up dirt on him. And what I found is very interesting. She pulled up a new set of files. Senator Robert Carter has accepted illegal campaign contributions from foreign nationals, including several from companies connected to Samuel. He's also used his position to influence immigration decisions for wealthy donors, essentially selling visas and green cards to the highest bidder. Everything he's accusing you of, he's guilty of himself, times 10. Kofi stared at the documents. Where did you get this? I've been investigating him since the engagement party. Anyone who raises a daughter like Madison, anyone who treats marriage as purely a business transaction, that's someone with skeletons in their closet. I just had to find them. Amara smiled grimly. And once I found his immigration corruption, the rest was easy. Financial crimes, ethics violations, possible tax fraud. The senator has been very busy. So we blackmail him back? Fight corruption with more corruption? No. We release everything to the proper authorities and let justice take its course. Just like we did with Samuel and Marcus. She looked at him intently. But Kofi, this is different. Carter is a U.S. senator with powerful friends. Going after him will bring more heat than anything we've faced so far. Are you sure you want to do this? Kofi thought about his mother, dead for 13 years while he lived in ignorant comfort. He thought about the 47 people who died in Lagos. He thought about Auntie Efua and all the families in Pando who'd suffered while Samuel stole what was meant for them. He thought about spending his life compromising, negotiating with corrupt men, always choosing the safe path over the right path. I'm sure, he said. No more deals with devils. We do this the right way. By noon, they'd contacted the FBI, the Federal Election Commission, and immigration authorities. They turned over all of Amara's evidence on Senator Carter, along with a detailed statement about the bribes Samuel had paid 18 years ago, bribes Kofi had known nothing about. The press conference was scheduled for 3 p.m. Kofi stood in front of a room full of journalists, Amara beside him, and told the truth. 18 years ago, I came to this country as a teenager with dreams of education and success. I believed I'd come here legally, through proper channels. I've now learned that my uncle, Samuel Mensah, paid bribes to immigration officials to expedite my visa and green card process. I had no knowledge of these payments. I was 18 years old, trusting the adult who'd promised to help me build a better life. The room erupted with questions. Kofi held up his hand. I understand that ignorance of fraud doesn't excuse it. If immigration authorities determine that my status should be revoked, I will accept that decision. I love this country. It's given me opportunities one never could have imagined. But I won't stay here through corruption and lies. Mr. Mensah, a journalist called out. Are you saying you'd voluntarily leave the United States? I'm saying I'll accept whatever the legal process determines. But I'm also saying that I won't be blackmailed into silence about other people's corruption. Senator Robert Carter attempted to extort me, threatening to release this information unless I resumed my engagement to his daughter and funded his presidential campaign. I refused. And now I'm releasing information about the senator's own immigration crimes, his illegal campaign contributions, and his use of public office for personal gain." The room exploded. Journalists shouted questions over each other. Camera flashes went off like lightning. And through it all, Amara stood beside Kofi, her hand in his, unshakable. The next 72 hours were chaos. Senator Carter held his own press conference, denying everything. His lawyers filed defamation suits. His political allies rallied around him. But the evidence was too strong, too detailed. By day 3, calls for his resignation were coming from both parties. Immigration enforcement opened an investigation into Kofi's status, but they also opened investigations into Carter's corruption and the official Samuel had bribed. The story became less about one immigrant's questionable entry and more about systemic corruption in the immigration system. Through it all, support came from unexpected places. The Lagos families issued a statement supporting Kofi, praising his transparency and commitment to making things right. Communities across Ghana rallied, calling him a hero for standing up to corruption. Tech leaders and immigrant advocates spoke out about the need to focus on real immigration reform rather than punishing people victimized by corrupt officials. On day 5, Kofi received a call from his lawyer. "Immigration has made a decision. They want to meet with you tomorrow." That night, Kofi and Amara sat in his apartment, neither able to eat the dinner they'd ordered. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, could end tomorrow with a deportation order. "What will you do if they deport you?" Amara asked quietly. "Go back to Ghana, I suppose. Start over. Maybe that's what I should have done all along. And the company, Lagos, Kpando, I'll figure it out. Run things remotely if I can. If I can't," he shrugged, trying to appear braver than he felt, "then I'll have to trust the systems we've put in place, the people we've hired. The work will continue even if I can't be here to oversee it." "And us?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What happens to us?" Kofi took her hands, looking directly into her eyes. "Amara, if they deport me, come with me. Come back to Ghana. We'll get married in Kpando, rebuild there, make a difference from home. I don't care where we are as long as we're together." "You'd give up everything here? The company, the success, the life you've built?" "I'd give up everything for you. Don't you know that by now?" He smiled, sad but genuine. "You spent 18 years keeping a promise to a girl's fantasy. Let me spend the rest of my life keeping my promise to you. Whether that's here or in Ghana or anywhere else doesn't matter. What matters is that we're together." Amara was crying, but she was also smiling. "You know, when I planned all this, I never imagined it would end with you potentially being deported and me considering giving up everything to follow you back to the village. Life's funny that way. Kofi Mensah, you are either the bravest man I've ever met or the most foolish. Can't I be both?" She kissed him then, long and deep and desperate, as if trying to memorize the moment before everything changed. The next morning, they arrived at the immigration office downtown. The building was imposing, all gray concrete and government efficiency. Inside, they were led to a conference room where 3 officials waited, 2 from immigration enforcement and 1 from the FBI. "Mr. Mensah, Ms. Osei, please sit down." The senior immigration official, a woman named Director Hayes, gestured to chairs across the table. "We've completed our investigation into your immigration status and the allegations of fraud." Kofi braced himself. This was it. The moment everything ended or somehow, miraculously, continued. "After extensive review of the documents, interviews with the officials involved, and examination of your personal records, we've determined that you were indeed a victim of fraud rather than a participant in it." Director Hayes slid a folder across the table. "Your uncle paid bribes without your knowledge. You entered the country believing everything was legitimate. While the situation is highly irregular, we're not going to penalize you for crimes committed by others when you were a minor." Kofi felt his heart hammering. "So I can stay?" "You can stay. However, we are requiring you to go through a regularization process, essentially refiling for permanent residency with full transparency about what happened. It's a formality at this point, but it's necessary to clear the record. I'll do whatever's necessary. The FBI agent leaned forward. We also want to thank you for your cooperation in the investigation into Senator Carter. Your evidence has been invaluable. The senator is currently facing federal charges for corruption, bribery, and abuse of power. Several immigration officials are also being charged. You've helped us uncover a network of corruption that's been operating for years. What about Madison? Amara asked. The senator's daughter. Is she involved? Ms. Carter appears to have been unaware of her father's activities. She's cooperating with the investigation and has not been charged with any crimes. They left the immigration office in a daze. On the street outside, with Manhattan bustling around them, Kofi pulled Amara into his arms and just held her, both of them shaking with relief. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. Did you ever doubt we would? Every single day. He laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. But you never doubted, did you? I had a plan, Amara said, pulling back to look at him. 18 years in the making. I wasn't going to let it fail at the finish line. They walked through the city hand in hand, not ready to go back to work, not ready to face the next crisis or challenge. For a few hours, they were just two people in love, celebrating a victory that had seemed impossible. Kofi's phone rang. Jennifer. He considered ignoring it, but old habits died hard. Yes. Mr. Mensah, you need to come to the office. Immediately. Jennifer's voice was strange, excited but trying to stay professional. There's someone here to see you. Actually, there are a lot of someones here to see you. Who? Just come see. You're going to want to see this. 15 minutes later, Kofi and Amara walked into the Mensah Technologies lobby and stopped dead. The entire space was filled with people. Dozens of them, maybe over 100. People from Lagos, recognizable from the memorial photos. People from Ghana, from Kpando. Auntie Grace and her family. David and his wife. Board members. Employees. Even some journalists who'd been following the story. Reverend Okonkwo stepped forward from the crowd, his dignified face breaking into a wide smile. Mr. Mensah. Ms. Osei. We heard about your immigration situation. We heard about Senator Carter's threats. And we wanted to be here to support you. But how did you all? Kofi couldn't finish the sentence, overwhelmed. We're your community, a woman from Kpando said, stepping forward. She was elderly, with kind eyes and a traditional cloth wrapped around her. I'm Abina, your mother's sister. Your aunt. I never met you because I thought you'd abandoned us, forgotten us. But now I know the truth. And I'm here to say we're proud of you. Your mother would be proud of you. Tears streamed down Kofi's face. Auntie Abina. I didn't know you were. I'm so sorry I never. Hush. She pulled him into a hug. No more apologies. No more guilt. You've made things right. You've honored your family, your village, your mother's memory. That's all that matters now. One by one, people came forward. The Lagos families, thanking him for the compensation and the new bridge. Village elders from Kpando, blessing his upcoming marriage. Employees expressing loyalty. Board members reaffirming their support. It was overwhelming and beautiful and everything Kofi hadn't known he needed. Amara stood beside him through it all, greeting people, accepting congratulations, fielding questions about the wedding. And watching her interact with everyone, with grace and warmth and genuine connection, Kofi realized something profound. She hadn't just saved him. She'd brought him home. Not to a physical place, but to a sense of community, of belonging, of being rooted in something larger than himself. All those years in America, he'd been floating, disconnected from his past but never fully part of his present. Amara had bridged that gap, had shown him how to carry his history with him while building his future. That evening, after everyone had left, after the hugs and tears and promises to stay in touch, Kofi and Amara stood in his office looking out over the city. 18 years, Kofi said softly. You spent 18 years planning all of this. Was it worth it? Amara leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. Ask me again on our wedding day. When should that be? The wedding. The red dust of Pando rose in small clouds as the convoy of cars arrived at the village square. Kofi stepped out of the lead vehicle and stood for a moment, just breathing in the air of his childhood, dry earth and wood smoke, the distant scent of cooking fires, and something else he couldn't name but recognized in his bones. It had been 18 years since he'd left. 18 years of success and betrayal, of building empires and discovering they were built on lies. 18 years that had led him in a circle back to where he'd started, but changed. Better. Whole. Amara emerged from the car behind him, wearing a traditional Kent cloth in rich golds and reds, her hair braided in intricate patterns by village women who'd worked on it since dawn. She looked like royalty. She looked like home. "Ready?" she asked, taking his hand. "I've been ready for 18 years. I just didn't know it." The village square had been transformed. Canopies of woven palm fronds provided shade. Tables overflowed with food, jollof rice and fried plantains, kelaweel and grilled tilapia, fufu and light soup, every dish Kofi remembered from his childhood and more. Musicians were setting up their drums and instruments. Children ran everywhere, shrieking with excitement. And people. Hundreds of people. Not just from Pando but from surrounding villages, from Accra, even from Lagos. Reverend Okonkwo had come with several families Kofi had helped. Auntie Abina stood at the center of it all, directing preparations with the authority of a general commanding troops. "Kofi, you're finally here." Auntie Abina rushed over, enveloping him in a hug that smelled like shea butter and decades of love. "We've been preparing for weeks. This wedding will be talked about for generations." "You didn't have to do all this, Auntie." "Didn't have to? Your mother was my sister. You're the son who came home. Of course we did all this and more." She turned to Amara, taking her hands. "And you, child. Efua's daughter. I remember when you were small, following Kofi around like a shadow, announcing to anyone who would listen that you'd marry him someday. We all thought it was a child's fantasy." "So did I for a while," Amara admitted. "But Mama always said that promises matter, that words have power. She taught me to mean what I say. Efua was a wise woman. She would be so proud of you both." Auntie Abina's eyes filled with tears. "Come. The elders are waiting to bless you before the ceremony begins." The blessing ceremony took place in the shade of an ancient baobab tree at the edge of the village. 7 elders, 5 men and 2 women, their faces weathered by time and sun, sat in a semicircle. Kofi and Amara knelt before them on woven mats. The eldest, a man named Kofi Aguman, whom Kofi had been named after, spoke first. "Kofi Mensa, son of this village, you left as a boy and return as a man. You have brought honor to your family name, but more importantly, you have brought justice and truth. Speak now, why do you wish to marry Amara Osei?" Kofi took a breath, speaking in Twi so everyone could understand. "I wish to marry Amara because she is the strongest person I know. Because she kept a promise when she could have forgotten it. Because she showed me the truth when I was living in lies. Because she makes me want to be better, do better, live better. And because I love her with everything I am." Elder Kofi nodded approvingly. "And Amara Osei, daughter of Efua who we all remember with love, why do you wish to marry this man?" Amara's voice was steady, clear. "I wish to marry Kofi because he never forgot where he came from, even when he thought he had. Because he chooses truth over comfort, justice over convenience. Because he cries at sad movies and eats fufu with his hands and carries the weight of the world on his shoulders but still finds room to care about one more person, one more problem, one more way to help. And because the 7-year-old girl who promised to marry him grew up, but the promise never changed. I love him. I have always loved him. I will always love him." The elders conferred quietly among themselves. Then Elder Kofi stood, gesturing for both of them to rise. "We have heard your words. We have seen your actions. We bless this union. May your marriage be strong like the baobab tree, deep-rooted and enduring. May your love be vast like the sky, unchanging and eternal. May your partnership bear fruit like the fertile earth, nourishing many. Go now and marry with our blessing. The traditional ceremony that followed was beautiful and chaotic in equal measure. There was the knocking ceremony, where Kofi's family formally asked for Amara's hand. The exchange of gifts, Kofi presenting kola nuts and schnapps to Amara's surviving relatives, Amara's aunt presenting symbolic items representing what a wife should bring to a marriage. There were prayers and libations, calling on ancestors to witness and bless the union. Elder Kofi poured palm wine on the earth, naming those who had passed, Kofi's mother, Amara's mother, all those who had shaped them but couldn't be there to celebrate. And then, finally, the moment Kofi had been both dreading and anticipating, the vows. They stood facing each other under the largest canopy, surrounded by everyone who mattered. Amara had removed her outer cloth, revealing a stunning white gown underneath, modern but with traditional touches, East meeting West, past meeting future. The pastor, not Reverend Okonkwo, but the local Pando minister who had known both families for decades, smiled at them. We stand here today to witness the fulfillment of a promise made 18 years ago. A child's promise that became a woman's quest. A man's laughter that became a man's love. Kofi, speak your vows. Kofi took Amara's hands, and suddenly all the words he'd prepared fled. Instead, what came out was simpler, truer. Amara, when I left this village 18 years ago, I thought I was leaving to become someone important, someone successful. But I was wrong about what success meant. Real success isn't money or fame or building empires. Real success is keeping your promises, honoring your word, taking care of the people who took care of you. You taught me that. You showed me what it means to be truly strong, truly brave, truly good. His voice cracked, but he continued. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of you. I promise to listen when you push me to do better, to stand beside you in every fight, to honor your mother's memory and mine by living the kind of life they would be proud of. I promise to love you not just today, but every day. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. You kept your promise to that 7-year-old girl. Now I'm keeping mine. I choose you, Amara. Today and always. Amara was crying, but she was also smiling. That fierce, beautiful smile that had captivated him from the moment she'd walked into his engagement party and turned his life upside down. Kofi, I spent 18 years preparing for this moment. I thought I knew exactly what I would say, exactly how I would feel. But now that I'm here, now that you're standing in front of me promising forever, I realize that nothing I planned could capture what I'm actually feeling. She squeezed his hands. You weren't supposed to be real. You were supposed to be an idea, a goal, a symbol of everything I was working toward. But then you became a person, complicated and flawed and trying so hard to do the right thing even when it's terrifying. You became someone I wanted to protect as much as someone I wanted to fight. You became my best friend, my partner, my home. I promise to challenge you when you need challenging and support you when you need support. I promise to remember where we came from even as we build where we're going. I promise to keep making you foo-foo and laughing at your terrible jokes and reminding you that success isn't measured in money but in the lives we touch and the justice we serve. I promise to love you with the same determination I brought to finding you, to keeping my promise, to making this moment possible. You are my husband, Kofi Mensah. And I am your wife. Finally. Forever. The pastor pronounced them married in English, then in Twi, then with a blessing that mixed Christianity and traditional prayers in the way that only African spirituality can. And when Kofi kissed his wife, the entire village erupted in cheers and ululations and the beating of drums. The celebration that followed was everything a village wedding should be, loud and joyous and lasting until the sun set and then well beyond. There was dancing, so much dancing that Kofi's legs ached and his face hurt from smiling. There were speeches from elders and friends, stories about both of them as children, blessings and well-wishes in half a dozen languages. David had flown in from New York with his family and stood up to tell everyone about young Kofi in college, coding until 3 in the morning and surviving on ramen noodles and dreams. Auntie Grace brought half her restaurant with her, ensuring the food never stopped coming. The Lagos families presented Kofi and Amara with a plaque honoring them as champions of justice and truth. But the moment that broke Kofi completely came late in the evening, when the celebration had mellowed into smaller conversations and quiet music. A young woman approached, perhaps 19 or 20, with a small child on her hip. "Mr. Mensah? I'm Grace. Grace Okonkwo. Reverend Okonkwo's granddaughter." Kofi stood immediately. "Grace. It's wonderful to meet you. Is your grandfather here?" "He's resting. The journey tired him." She shifted the baby on her hip. "But he wanted me to give you something." "We all did." She pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. Inside was a letter, written in careful English, signed by all 47 families who had lost someone in the Lagos Bridge collapse. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mensah," it read, "we write this letter on your wedding day to tell you something important. When our loved ones died, we thought justice was impossible. We thought powerful people would bury the truth, that our grief would go unheard, that nothing would change. But you changed everything. You gave us truth, compensation, and most importantly, dignity. You showed us that some people still care about doing what's right even when it's hard. We are here today not to ask for anything more, but to give you something, our blessing. May your marriage be filled with the kind of courage you showed us. May your love endure like the truth endures. May you always remember that you are not just building a life together, but changing the world. Thank you. We will never forget what you did. Our children will tell your story. And when they ask what true love looks like, we will point to you too, a woman who kept an impossible promise and a man who chose truth over comfort. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Kofi couldn't read the rest through his tears. Amara took the letter from him, reading it silently, her own eyes streaming. Then she pulled him close, and they stood together under the stars of Pando, holding each other while the village celebrated around them. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it. You did it. You made all of this possible." "No. We did it. Together. That was always the point, Kofi. Not me alone or you alone, but us together. That's what makes this work." Later, much later, when the celebration had finally wound down and most people had drifted away to sleep or continue quieter conversations, Kofi and Amara stood at the edge of the village, looking out over the land that had shaped them both. "What happens now?" Kofi asked. "We've defeated the bad guys, made restitution, gotten married. What's the next chapter? Now?" Amara leaned against him, comfortable and content. "Now we live. We run the company with integrity. We continue supporting Lagos and Pando. We build a life together. Maybe have children who'll grow up knowing where they came from and why it matters. We keep promises, tell truth, and try to make the world a little bit better. That's it. Just live. Just live. Is that not enough?" Kofi thought about everything they'd been through, the betrayals and battles, the revelations and redemptions. He thought about the 18 years Amara had spent preparing for this moment. He thought about his mother, who'd died without seeing him again, and Auntie Efua, who'd raised a daughter fierce enough to change the world. "It's more than enough," he said. "It's everything." They stayed there for a long time, two people who'd traveled impossible distances to find each other, who'd fought impossible battles to be together, who'd kept impossible promises because they believed words mattered, that truth mattered, that love mattered most of all. Somewhere in the village, a child was telling his younger sister a story, about a little girl who promised to marry a boy who was leaving for America, about how he laughed and left anyway, about how she grew up and became strong and brilliant and brave, about how she found him 18 years later and made him keep his promise. "And did they live happily ever after?" the little sister asked. "They lived truthfully ever after," the boy corrected. "Which is better? Because happiness can be fake, but truth is forever." His sister considered this, then nodded solemnly. "I want to be like Amara when I grow up. Strong and brave and able to make people keep their promises." "Then you have to mean what you say. You have to keep your own promises first." "I will," the girl said seriously. "I promise." And perhaps, in another 18 years, another story would begin. Another promise made and kept. Another journey from laughter to love, from doubt to destiny. But tonight belonged to Kofi and Amara. Tonight belonged to a promise fulfilled, a love earned, a future built on truth and courage and the simple, radical belief that some things are worth fighting for. Kofi Mensah had left Kpando as a boy with dreams of success. He returned as a man who'd learned that success wasn't measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in promises kept and people honored and love that endured despite everything trying to break it. And Amara Osei, the little girl who'd announced to a laughing teenager that she would be his wife someday, had grown into a woman who made the impossible possible, who turned a child's fantasy into a reality that changed not just her life or his, but the lives of hundreds of people across 2 continents. "When I grow up, I'll be your wife," she'd said. He'd laughed. 18 years later, she'd returned, not as a dream, but as a force of nature. Not to beg for his attention, but to demand his accountability. Not to be saved, but to do the saving. And in the end, they'd saved each other. That was the real story. Not the drama or the battles, not the corrupt uncles or the vengeful senators. But 2 people choosing each other, day after day, moment after moment, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. "I love you, Mrs. Mensah," Kofi whispered into the Kpando night. "I love you, Mr. Mensah," Amara replied. "I always have. I always will." And under the stars of Ghana, surrounded by the ancestors who'd guided them and the community who'd supported them, Kofi Mensah and Amara Osei began the greatest adventure of all. Not building empires or fighting corruption or pursuing justice, though they do all of those things, but simply living, truthfully, lovingly, courageously, together, forever. Thank you so much for following Kofi and Amara's incredible journey from that fateful moment 18 years ago to this beautiful ending. If this story touched your heart, moved you, or made you believe in the power of keeping promises and standing up for truth, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to believe that justice is possible, that love can endure, that promises matter. Drop a comment below telling me, what was your favorite moment in the story? What lesson did you take away from Kofi and Amara's journey? I read every comment and I'd love to hear from you. Until the next story, remember, some promises are worth keeping, no matter how long it takes. Thank you for watching, and God bless.